For the 59th time, we'll go twice round the clock with Daytona International Speedway. Hello everybody and welcome to the start of the 2021 international sports car season here in the US with the IMSA WeatherTech SportsCar Championship first round. It's like starting your season with the Super Bowl, isn't it? It's one of the very big ones. I'm John Hindhaugh in the Haggerty Global Broadcast Centre. There are 5 sets of Rolex Daytona Cosmograph watches up for grabs in 24 hours' time. We're just inland from the famous Daytona Beach, land speed records and plenty of racing there. But the 3.5 mile road circuit here inside the oval, well, this place was always thought of as somewhere for endurance racing. And, of course, the first meeting here was a sports car race. Of course it was. 12 corners make up the challenge that these drivers will be taking for the next day. Jeremy Shaw and Shea Adam join me in this part of the programme. We've got Johnny Palmer with us as well. Johnny and Jeremy with me here in the Haggerty Global Broadcast Centre. Our VP Racing Fuel pit reporter, Shea Adam, will be keeping us up to date with what is going on. And before we get to the start of the race, we've got a little bit of time. There hasn't been, of course, so much of the traditional build-up because of the current circumstances, so we can't easily talk to the drivers, but that hasn't stopped us. Our VP Racing Pit and Paddock reporter, VP Racing Fuels Pit and Paddock reporter, Shea Adam, has spoken to the man who will start the 31. That is the Whelen Engineering Cadillac, the red and white car, Pipo Derani, and they spoke earlier on today. Ipo Durrani and the number 31 Wheel and Engineering Cadillac leading the field around. Thanks for joining us on our Michelin countdown to green. Let's take a quick look at our Porsche keys to the race. Shea Adam, we've been talking about this right from the war. Rules rule.
Read the rule book. It's a long off season. You've got a lot of time to study the rule book, to take notes on it. That has made a difference so far already in running at Daytona. They've been at it for more than a week now. You've got no excuses to read the 160 plus pages, or to at least have it on your computer so you can control F any answers you have at any point in time. But read the rule book, pay attention. That's the difference between winning the race and getting a penalty that'll take you through the pit lane and take you flat out of it.
Well, and Jeremy, that's a good point, isn't it? Because pit's perfect is my second Porsche key to the race. You're going to be in and out the pits quite a few times in the next day. Jeremy?
Many times. That's exactly right, John. I was talking to Mike Hull, who's the long-time managing director at Chip Ganassi Racing. The last time they were in this series, they were running GT LM cars. They made a pit stop around about every hour. The last time he was in running a prototype car, which was 5 years ago now, again it was around about pit stops a bit every hour, around about that at least. So now they're going to be making pit stops at least every 40 minutes. That requires, he says, a completely different mindset, and that is something that the Chip Ganassi team has worked extremely hard on, as of course have all the others as well.
Joining our broadcast crew in the Haggerty Global Broadcast Centre once again, Johnny Palmer. Johnny, third Porsche key to the race for you. Pick your passes. We're not talking about soccer here, but you've got to make it decisive and make sure you get it right.
So many times in the past, John, there have been moves into the first corner, let's say, into the bus stop, and they've been half-hearted, particularly in the final 3 to 4 hours of the race. You can't afford to make the stewards question that and potentially give you a penalty. So you've always got to be thinking, and in those middle classes, that's even more tricky, looking in the mirrors and in front at the same time.
Jeremy Shaw, high noon is my penultimate Porsche key to the race. When we get to midday on Sunday, there's 3 hours and 40 minutes to go, and that's when you're really going to know exactly where you are and what resources you've got left to push with.
Yeah, up until that sort of time in the race, you've got to be a little bit cautious. You're not driving 100%, but yeah, around about noon time, that's as Lewis Hamilton would say, that's hammer time. That's the time to get going. No holds barred after that. Get on it and try and get this race win. It's all important. The Daytona chronograph.
Shea Adam, the final Porsche key to the race is yours, and the tyres.
And the tires. We have a set tire allocation for each class that began at the beginning of the race meeting, which was the beginning of the week. 38 sets for the DPI and LMP2 categories, 37 sets for GTLM, and then 30 sets for each of LMP3 and the GTD runners. It means that you can use these tires whenever you'd like them, but some of the teams have sat out some sessions and have run less on the new tires and more often on old tires to keep the powder dry for the race.
It's our Porsche keys to the race. We'll revisit them. Good to hear Johnny Palmer's voice in the Haggerty Global Broadcast Centre. Again, he's going to stay with us for this opening stanza of the race. Let's take our first VP Racing Fuel Pit and Paddock report. And if you're a Mazda fan, Shea Adam, this is not good news.
Not good news at all. Oliver Jarvis had trouble selecting first gear when trying to roll out for this pace lap. Did manage to get it done, but the crew is worried that it will be a reoccurring issue. They need first gear every pit stop of the race.
So no number 55 there. It's Felipe Nasser behind the wheel of the 31 Whelen car as he brings the field around. He'll have Loic Duval alongside him. He has taken up the position that would have been occupied by the white number 55. It's the darker grey car as they come to the line, and we're green for the 59th running of the Rolex 24 Hours at Daytona. The cars streak underneath the tri-oval, through the tri-oval, underneath our commentary position and down through the back kink chicane, and it is the pole sitter Felipe Nasser down for the first time into the hairpin at the International Horseshoe side by side. That looked like we had the Ally Cadillac racing car and Jimmy Johnson trying to make up some room there. Also trying to get a little bit racy. Renger van der Zande in the Cadillac Chip Ganassi racing car. Those are the two lighter racing Cadillacs. The GT cars have also just gone across the line behind the two other prototype classes, and as they head on to the start of their first lap on the infield, it seems to be all as they were when they went across the line. And we've had a spinner. We've had a spinner. Just as I say that, I've cursed one of the cars. It was the number 79, I think, that's gone around. I'll wait for confirmation of that. That's the WeatherTech Racing Ferrari, the Cooper McNeil car. Yeah, it's got damage at the back as well. So either has had some contact which spun the car, or indeed that was as a result, and some contact on the hard edges of the circuit. But at the front of the field, it's all clear and plain sailing for the number 31, which started on pole position. They've spread out nicely around the track with that split start, Jeremy. That at least worked very well indeed.
Yeah, they did. That was a really good move there by IMSA to make the call. Actually, we've been talking about it for ages, haven't we? So they've listened to us, I think. Don't you reckon? Yeah, something like that. No, nice sensible start here. No one is prepared to push too hard at this stage in the race. They're quite happy to let things settle down. Having said that, Felipe Nasser, he will look to extend his advantage if he possibly can. But again, he's not going to push the car too hard at this stage because there's so much can happen. There will be full course cautions. So even if you pull out a big lead now, you're going to get reined back in again. So try and save some fuel. Go as long as you can before you make your first pit stop of the day.
It's Jeremy Shaw. He's with me and Johnny Palmer in the Haggerty Global Broadcast Centre. Shea Adam is our VP Racing Fuel Pit and Paddock reporter. Just a quick note, if you've only just joined us for the televised, the international TV stream, that there has been an enforced driver change in the Allegra Motorsport car. Michael Di Casada has been replaced by Mike Skeen. Di Casada's grandfather being honoured on that car with a special sticker, but Michael, unfortunately, poorly and not able to take part in the race. So, Johnny Palmer, we're off and running, and I know you've been watching as much as you can in the early stages, but really your first opportunity to see some competitive running as part of the team. You do get the feeling of Daytona being an event, even when there are fewer people here. JP, can you hear us? Well, we'll try and get back to Johnny in a moment or two, as already Ollie Jarvis is working his way through the traffic. And keep an eye on that number 55 car. Remember, it had to start from slightly further down. And wow, the 79 WeatherTech cars had a wild opening lap with damage right in the middle of the rear bumper, and then coming through out of turn number 5, the Western Horseshoe, and then the short shoot to turn 6, very nearly getting picked up by, I think, was that the Paul Miller Lamborghini, Jeremy, that was shuffled off the circuit and then came back in?
I think it was. It certainly looked like it. Yeah. Yes, John.
Already in the pit lane, Shea Adam, you have some business. You have a pit caller.
Because of the late driver change for car number 28, they have to serve a drive-through penalty for changing the driver after the official grid was issued. And Mike Skeen is currently on a plane heading to the track. He's slated to arrive around 10 p.m. tonight, but Mike Skeen is not allowed to do any night driving because he did not participate in either of the night sessions or the Roar. So that means that Mike Skeen's drive time will all have to come tomorrow morning in this race.
Wow. All right, so that's some shuffling around for the team to sort up. And it was indeed Madison Snow in the #1 Paul Miller Racing Lamborghini, the 48, their full season number, appropriated this weekend by Mr. 48, Jimmy Johnson. That's why it's on their car. Although in fairness, they did win their class here last year, so I sort of think the #1's quite appropriate for them as well. Although they weren't the in-series champions last year, of course. GT Daytona next year. This time we'll have a GTD Pro and no GT Le Mans cars. Talking about that on the Haggerty Inside Track programme on Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. UK, Sound and Vision. Big change for the GT ranks as IMSA once again takes the lead and addresses falling numbers of GT Le Mans car here in the United States. GTE Arm in particular at Le Mans and in the European Le Mans series still very, very healthy indeed. Get to some penalties in a moment, but we've got another cracking battle going on for second place between Dane Cameron and Meershank Racing with Curb Agajanian Acura. Yes, made a change in their manufacturer in the close season. Dane Cameron then in the 60 car and side by side with Loic Duval does get it done on the Mustang sampling car. No, he hasn't. Mustang sampling car thought he got that finished there before they got down to the kink, and then Renger van der Zand has had a good start as well, hasn't he? For that sort of chalk crayon coloured car, third of the 4 that are going up on the bankings, and then behind that is the Konica Minolta Acura, the number 10 car from Wayne Taylor Racing. So those teams taking over the Penske Acuras from last year. The Penske deal had expired, and they both got a couple of cars in the close season and have rebuilt them. Has been those cars have been, as I say, reallocated. Shea Adam, is this a clue to what happened early on to the WeatherTech car? As we've got someone trundling down the pit lane for a, I guess a drive-through, is it?
May I do my best Joe Bradley impression?
Okay.
The 25 BMW started in line behind the 79 Porsche. The 25 BMW was handed an incident responsibility penalty for a drive-through, and the rear bumper of the Porsche is the bit that's damaged, and actually part of it is sitting at the exit of the bus stop.
And quite a lot of it is waving around in the airstream as that car goes through the kink. They'll have to come into the pits. They'll get a mechanical for that one, unless it can be flicked off and basically sent somewhere safe. It's hanging on at the moment. Oh, actually, there's a bit of diffuser damage as well under there. There it goes. It's gone off and turned 6 towards the edge of the track, but that's a diffuser as well. They're going to have to come in. That car is going to be really difficult to drive, even for someone as experienced as Kevin Estre. It's off. No, it's not off the racing line, as one of the AMGs almost hit it. I think that was the Allegra car actually coming through there. Full course yellow, our first one after just 9 minutes of racing in the 2021 IMSA WeatherTech SportsCar Championship season. It is the Rolex 24 at Daytona, and you're tuned to IMSA Radio and IMSA TV. Well, that didn't take long, Jeremy. Who had 9 minutes on the sweepstakes? Come on, admit it. I knew it would be you.
I thought it was going to be, with the split start. I thought, maybe it might be better this time, but oh no. He was a bit unlucky there. Certainly, there were 2 GTD cars. I'm not sure why he was behind a GTD car's mind, but they were sort of fighting amongst themselves there, and Cooper was sort of in the wrong place at the wrong time. He tried to avoid them, accelerated past them, but was just clipped as he went through. It really was just sort of kind of one of those things, is what it looked like. Most unfortunate.
It shows, if nothing else, and sure we know this because we've seen how quickly they can be replaced. Those rear bumper, and underfloor, effectively the diffuser underneath the gearbox, as it is, of the Porsche 911 RSR 19, although that car is updated to full 2021 spec. It's not held on by an awful lot of things. It's meant to be able to be removed and replaced quickly, but there wasn't enough just holding it on there, and it eventually gave up the ghost.
It's pretty much 2 latches and some screws that tends to hold it into place. I think the latches would be the biggest concern at this point, whether or not those were damaged with the bodywork flicking off. But you're correct. It shouldn't be that hard of a job for the Porsche to just sort of slat a new one on there. The question is, how many of those spare bumpers do they have? Because those things are expensive, and the factory team only kept 2 on hand.
It was quite a big schmozzle in the back of the GT field there, Jeremy, as they came to the line, and that was a much bigger hit than I thought it was, because that was a full spin that Estre was pushed into.
Yeah, indeed so. Yes, it was. It was lucky there wasn't more damage, I guess.
And that was the BMW, caused by the BMW, which came down the pit lane. But for the incident responsibility, well, take a bit of a breath early on then. Should have put a brew on if I'd known this was going to happen. You're listening to IMSA Radio, 107.9 FM around the track, Sirius 216, XM 202 around the US and around the world, of course, on the new home for all things IMSA broadcasts from us here at Radio Show Limited, www.imsaradio.com. And many of you have been there throughout the week, I know, and before, downloading the previews, listening into the live radio shows, and if you are in a territory that does not have a network TV deal, you can see pictures as well as listen to the sounds of us talking about our favourite thing, sports cars, for a very long time. So we've got the safety car out, and the Mazda number 55, remember, started out of position with a gear selection problem when they were trying to get out for the formation. And Ollie Jarvis has got that car going. And where has he got to in the field, Jeremy? He's just cracked the top 20, I see.
Yes, indeed, he did. But now, under this full course caution, I think this is a short yellow because we were not 15 minutes into the race. But he should be able, I think, to pull his way through onto the back of the DPI field before we get ready for the restart. So this caution period, certainly good news for that Mazda.
So not even a quarter of an hour in, the yellows came out at 9 minutes into the race. We've got the debris cleared. I'm suspecting, well, I was sort of expecting this year to be a quickie yellow. They haven't opened the pits, they may not do that, but they are still going to do the class split and the pass around, Jeremy.
Yeah, that's normal. I think they do that mainly for safety reasons. So they get all the what should be the cars at similar speed at similar places on the racetrack. That's kind of normal. I think they normally do a class split. They just don't open the pits and do the rest of the procedures.
I wonder if we might see, however, the number 79 WeatherTech Porsche dive in the pits when we go back to green then. Dave Alcock tweeting us at IMSA Radio. Hashtag, by the way, R24 Radio said that's an aggressive weight loss strategy for Porsche, shedding chunks of bodywork and underfloor in the first 10 minutes of racing. Do you think they're on a fuel strafe strategy? I tell you what, there will be if they try to go around like that, Dave, because that rear diffuser, the reason that they changed the engine and the gearbox around on the 911 was to get a more effective diffuser under the back of the car, and it produces a whole lot of downforce for a very small amount of drag compared to other aerodynamic devices. And so Kevin Estre at the moment will be driving somewhat hamstrung, and it will be of no surprise that he has dropped down to 35th position behind the top 6 in GT Daytona. Led, by the way, at the moment by the Lexus RCF of Frank Montecalvo, the number 12 car, ahead of Robbie Foley for Turner Motorsport, the GRT Grasser Racing Lamborghini. 12.96 and 111. Rolf Nation behind the wheel of the third place Lambo. In GT Le Mans, it's Tom Milner ahead of his Corvette Racing teammate Antonio Garcia. 4 from 3 from 62. The Risi Competizione Ferrari, and then John Edwards with the other two cars. Estra, as we said, further down, and of course the team car, the 25, the red BMW, has been into the pits for incident responsibility drive-through. In LMP3, Moritz Kranz from pole position, and Muller Motorsports is leading in the number 6 from the number 7 of 47 Motorsports. That's the two Duquesne, the company formerly known as Norma, leading out from Rasmus Lind for Performance Tech Motorsport in the 38 in third, and Gar Robinson for Riley in fourth position. In a very healthy LMP2 entry, and great to see this many cars out. It's Ben Keating from PR1 Matheson Motorsport with the 52 wins car that leads out from Dennis Anderson from High Class Racing. The Orica's dominating there, 52 and 20. But good to see Chettilar Racing and Roberto Lecourt in the 47 Dallara sitting in third place. Fourth, John Ferrano. Fifth, Sally Yullick for the Ligier. And at the front of the field, as we're ready to go back to green flag racing, it will be Felipe Nasser for Whelen Engineering Racing Cadillac, the red-white car, who has control of the field now in the tri-oval. Lloyd Duval still in second. Renke van der Zande up to third in the lighter coloured 01 Cadillac. Top three, all Cadillacs. Then the first of the Acuras, Dane Cameron for Meyer Shank Racing. And look further back down the field, fifth position, Ollie Jarvis carving his way back through, so that yellow flag really helping out Mazda, and Ollie Jarvis already on the move, side by side with Philippe Albuquerque. In fact, no, he's gone through. Jimmy Johnson's right there, and the Ally Cadillac as well. That's magnificent stuff from the Englishman as he battled from early problems, couldn't get first gear when they need to move out the pit lane in that Alpine white number 55. And a spin in the prototype field, and that's the second place car, Jeremy, that's gone around there at the horseshoe.
I think he's just taken the lead actually, and that was Ryan Norman. Oh, and there's the that's the Olsen car. That was the leader. That's Moritz Kranz.
Moritz Kranz in the blue-white car. They've come together, yeah. Jeremy, haven't they? So. And that must have been somewhere near turn one, because Moritz Kranz wasn't coming out. No, he was coming out of the horseshoe. I thought it was a little bit further on, but I think Kranz has got some damage to that car. There's what looks to be some kind of suspension damage maybe on that H&R blue and white machine. He's got a long way to go around. Just it looks like the steering isn't pointing where he wants to go either, Jeremy. So he's now going to drop a lap, and I think the other car is moving again, isn't it? So that might not be so bad.
I think so. Right? Ryan Norman got away with it, the former Indy Lights driver, and of course defending series champion from TCR from the Michelin Pilot Challenge Series last year, along with Gabby Chavez. So Ryan making his prototype debut here this weekend, and I don't know what happened between those two, but it certainly looked a bit crowded as they were coming off for the turn, the international horseshoe at turn 3.
Yeah, so the 47 Motorsport, the Müller Motorsport car, both in trouble. And Shea, we have had a pit caller, and it's one we were expecting in this VP Racing Fuel pit paddock report.
Kevin Estre is still in the pits, as a matter of fact, as the WeatherTech Racing crew goes to work on the rear end of that car trying to replace the diffuser. This is one lap lost so far. I'll keep track of it and let you know when it goes back out. No driver change planned at this point.
Indeed not. As Moritz Kranz pulls to the side of the track, heading into the bus stop. I don't think he's going to park the Müller car there. I just think he's staying out of the way. Really smart work. Whilst the rest of the field comes through, he's desperately trying to stay off the racing line. In fact, driving on the grass. And actually, that's pretty heads-up driving for everybody's concern Jeremy Shaw, because he doesn't want it to get in anybody else's way, but of course he doesn't want to get hit again either.
Yeah, that's very true, John. And what's amazing is all of a sudden the number 4 Corvette was running behind the LMP3s at the restart in 25th position. He's all the way up to 18th now. He's passed all of them. So it's Tommy Milner who leads GTLM, the 18th position overall. Rasmus Lind it is who now leads for Performance Tech in LMP3. Right behind him is Antonio Garcia, the second wheel Corvettes. And then another LMP3 car, that'd be Gar Robinson in the number 74 car.
Great Porsche, Brumos Porsche convoy earlier on in the day today. Absolutely outstanding. Hurley Haywood, a big favourite of ours, one of my personal heroes. Time spent with Mr. Haywood is never time wasted, whatever the subject of the chat is. And down through the years, we've enjoyed a glass of pleasant white wine and various things that we've been at together or working together. It's been my pleasure to interview him a few times. I just love to hear his views on everything, and Brumos and Hurley were honoured earlier on with a parade of Porsche. Looks like there might be some front-end damage to the 79 Porsche Shea as well, because they're looking at the steering on the WeatherTech car.
Yeah, and damage to the splitter of the car as well, as it was turned and nosed into the left side door of the Risi Competizione Ferrari. They do have a new door ready, by the way, in their pit box for when Alessandro Piaguidi comes in. They're not going to bring him in early, though. But that was a nose damage and tail damage. It was basically as bad as it could get for WeatherTech Racing. But they managed to put a new rear diffuser on that car, so that part at least is ready to go. The nose and the steering, on the other hand, will require a bit more work.
It's not a way to start, Jeremy, but I mean, the only thing we've talked about in our Porsche keys to the race, you don't want to be in the pits if you don't have to be. But they've got all the race to recover from that, not the way they wanted their GT Le Mans season to get underway. They've got a spinner at turn number 1 for RWR Eurasia, and the recovery, oh my goodness, reversing right round the blind part of the corner. That's not smart at all for Salih Yolik, but he's run out of steering lock and didn't flick turn it. The Turkish driver is in harm's way here. I think he should be able to get enough lock on to get round now. Yes, he can, and he's going to have to join very carefully indeed. And does get going. Now, I think it was just a wee mistake from Salih. Also a problem for the Wins car, Jeremy, and that was a car that was leading its class.
Goodness gracious me, that was the LMP3 car. There's Ryan Norman also still making his way back to the pit lane in car number 7. That's another of the LMP3 cars, as Felipe Nasr goes across the line to complete his 12th lap. 1 minute 35.031 for Nasr, the fastest lap of the race, set on the previous lap by Renger van der Zande, a 1:34.694. I mention that because that is only 0.2 of a second away from the race lap record that was set by Felipe Nasr in 2019, a 1:34.504. Last year's fastest lap, 1:34.652, which is fractionally quicker than the lap turn by Renger van der Zande so far, and it was Renger set the fastest lap last year. So a good, really good, strong early pace here. Conditions, of course, absolutely perfect out there. I think right now it's nice clear skies. The track is nice and dry, not too hot, but warm enough. So the track conditions are good, and the good speeds already being shown.
21 Celsius here, our friends at Michelin for the track temperature, 19 in the air. And Shea Adam has a 47 Motorsports update on the number 7 prototype.
Not at all confusing to say it like that, is it, John? No, the car just went back to the garage. It sounds awful from my sources in the paddock. It is not a happy car, and it was being reported on Race Control Chatter as spraying around the track, so that's not good. And also the number 4 Corvette, which was leading the GTLM category, you might have noticed a couple laps ago, Tommy Milner dropped down to 4th. He couldn't get out of 6th gear. He couldn't shift up coming out of the bus stop, which is turn 6, and now they've had it corrected. It was one of those Control-Alt-Delete things. But the worry is that that's going to rear its ugly head again for the Ford Corvette.
It's extraordinary, Jeremy. You know, I know these guys haven't had the perfect preparation because of everything that's going on right now, but we had pretty much trouble-free running last week at the Raw. They've had plenty of free practice time this week, and all of a sudden it seems like the race cars and in some cases the drivers have forgotten how to do their jobs.
It does rather, doesn't it? most unexpected. You're right. By the way, you talked about the Wins car going around and being the leader. That was the LMP3 Wins car that went around that had the spin, by the way, not the LMP2 car, which is also Wins sponsored. The PR1
Yes,
Matheson Motorsports entry of Ben Keating, who does still lead in P2, running a very fine 8th overall for Ben, and he's already pulled out 6.5 seconds over Roberto Lacorte in second place. We moved up to second place in that Chetelaar Racing Dallara. So he's making hay while the sun shines here, is Ben Keating, quite literally. And the other cars that are on move in GTD, we've now got a Lexus 1-2. Frankie Montecalvo leads. You talked about that a little while ago. At the caution period, he was already in front. Aaron Tielitz, though, has moved up to second place in the class of number 14 car. Third now, the pole sitter Robbie Foley, and then a whole train of cars behind him. I spoke to Aaron Tielitz just a little bit before the start from the Vasser Sullivan team. They're cautiously optimistic going into this race. They feel like they've got very, very good cars. They had a lot of success last season, of course, up until the last couple of races when it all went pear-shaped for them, and he missed out on the championship, which was looking quite good up until then. But Vasser Sullivan right now 1-2 for Lexus in GT Daytona.
Hello to Jane Edwards, who's tuned in the UK just after 9 o'clock there, just after 11 o'clock in South Africa. And I've got to be slightly formal on this because I don't know what your first name is. G. Cronje is tuned in, accidentally discovered endurance racing back in 2017, fell in love with it immediately. I hope you're in for the duration then, G. Cronje, out there in South Africa. At IMSA Radio, if you want to get in touch with us, the hashtag is R24 Radio. R24 for Rolex 24 Radio. It's Jeremy Shaw, John Hindhaugh and Shea Haddon with you in this first part of the session. Been a pretty decent one at the moment on the start and restart for Felipe Nasr. 34.8 last time around, getting into the stride, and this is exactly, Jeremy, what they will want to do. Get some good data in earlier on, make sure that they correlate with their fuel numbers, make sure that they're happy with their tyre wear once they get through to the first fuel stop. All right, we've had a couple of little interruptions, but for the most part it's been nice and clean for them. Great overtaking through the traffic by Felipe Nasr. Porsche key to the race number 3 was pick your passes. That goes just as much, Jeremy, in fact probably even more when you're coming through traffic as when you're battling for position.
Yeah, very much so. It's an art, and that's probably one of the differences between the pro drivers and the AM drivers, particularly in the pro-am classes, LMP2, GTD. You know, the pros, they've done this for generally longer than the AMs, and they are very adept at either overtaking without losing time or being overtaken without losing too much time. For the AM drivers, a little bit less experienced here, they're going to be a little bit more cautious because they want to make sure that they're not causing any dramas either for themselves or for anybody else. So, you know, that is definitely a factor. And you know, what makes a great endurance driver is, number one, looking after your car, probably, but secondly, and probably a close second, is making sure you can get through traffic cleanly with a minimum of fuss and time loss.
Delighted to say that Nelson Valkenburg is tuned in, hating the fact he's not at the Speedway, loving the fact he can still listen and watch Job van Uitert and some other of his friends out there as well. From the Netherlands, Nelson, nice to know that you're watching and listening sound and vision together. IMSARadio.com, RS2 on our radio player around the US on Sirius 216 XM 202 and 107.9 at the track. And hello to everyone who we haven't been able to see because of the regulations at the track. Carol Dwyer, who is on duty in the foyer of the main building where we normally come up in the lifts. All of our friends as well, the gentlemen in blue who are the security on the 5th and 6th floor for our normal spot in the booth. Unfortunately, haven't been able to say hello and have a chat with all of those, and Joe as well on the entrance to the Undercroft, who always has a chat with us when we're there. They always make us so welcome at Daytona, everybody from the front gate inwards. It's really great. 79. We have a penalty. Shea Adam.
They're still in the pit lane, John. They're still working on the front of that car, but more than the number of permitted crew members over the wall considered working on the car, which means that when it goes back out on the racetrack, we'll have to make a subsequent trip down the pit lane for a drive-through. That hurts.
Jeremy Shaw.
Well, yeah, it'll hurt, but the car's already losing many laps, so really an extra pit stop really isn't going to make any difference, to be perfectly honest. Of course, that WeatherTech car has been run by Proton Competition for the races this year, or in conjunction with Proton Competition, European-based team, not used, of course, to some of the rules here at Daytona. So a factor or not, I don't know. It could be just the fact they just wanted to get as many hands on deck to get that car where it needed to be. But I think that the penalty itself relatively inconsequential, unfortunately.
Wow, this has just been at the moment an absolute masterclass by Felipe Nasser. It's just over 3¼ seconds up on the rest of the field. But what we've seen, Jeremy, haven't we, over the years, and particularly in recent years at Daytona, is it's a bit like one of those disclaimers at the end of an investment advert. Present performance is no guarantee of future earnings. Well, it's a bit like that. As conditions change, it may not be the number 31 Cadillac that has the best package, and it will get a lot colder overnight. Putting new tyres on, the cars will be slower to start with because they're not allowed warmers. The relative performances could change from all of these cars in all 5 classes.
Very definitely, John, and we'll have more than half the race will be run in darkness, or at least between sunset and sunrise. Correct. At least it won't be fully dark, of course, when the sun goes down. But there is a lot of time in darkness where the sun is not shining directly onto the racetrack, and the racetrack will lose quite a bit of temperature, and that temperature in the racetrack is critical for these tyres. So yes, you're absolutely right. You hit the nail very squarely on the head, and it is a big factor. Oftentimes we will see cars maybe in the early stages looking particularly good, and then when it gets cooler, not so good. Sometimes the other way around. Of course, the best teams, they're good in all conditions, aren't they?
Well, yeah, 13 hours and 11 minutes between sunset today, just after 6 o'clock. So in just under 2 hours now, actually, and doesn't come up till...
Aren't there?
Sorry, say again, Jeremy?
Well, you're already long shadows.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
now.
Absolutely. So 13 hours and 11 minutes. We had 13 hours and 16 minutes at Dubai a couple of weeks ago. And just as a point of put that in context, we were saying how much darkness we had at Le Mans this year because it was in September rather than in the middle weeks of June, and that had just over 11 hours. So a good couple of hours more between sunset and sunrise here. Bit of a battle going on between Alessandro Perguidi, who has got nearly within striking distance in that Ricci Competizione Ferrari, to the Corvette number 3 that leads the race. BMW is in 3rd position with their M8 GTE, the BMW Team RLL car, and then, in fact, as I say that, Tommy Milner's just gone through, actually. Milner's just gone back into 3rd position in the number 4, so 362 and 4 now. Corvette Ricci Ferrari and Corvette Racing C8R are your top 3, but there is a battle on the infield at the moment with no traffic for a change ahead of them. The next car that they will come up to is the number 6, which is already just going out onto the banking, so there's a big gap between themselves and Moritz Krantz in 6th position in the Milner Motorsport Duquesne in LMP3. That's the next car ahead of them on the road. And Per Guidi doing a nice job at the moment, not pushing hard enough, Jeremy, to put himself in a position to pass. I'm not sure whether he can or he can't, but he just seems to be holding that gap at around about half a second.
Yeah, indeed, and it did stretch out just a little bit, but now not so much. And these battles are going to ebb and flow, aren't they, all the way through this race. It's certainly good to see that number 4 car back up to speed again then after the early glitch. Just about 3.5 seconds between the two leaders in GTLM, the Corvette and the Ferrari, and the Corvette and the BMW, dicing for 3rd position. We've already had problems again for a couple of those cars, but Bruno Spengler, he's about another half a minute back in the 5th position, with the WeatherTech Porsche unfortunately still out of action. I was just looking towards the front of the field. There was a change three or four laps ago for 4th position. 2 Acuras switched positions, and here we go for the first of the pit stops for the leaders. So it's number 10 ahead of number 60 as the 3rd place car for Chip Ganassi Racing comes onto the pit lane.
And Shea Adam has this VP Racing Fuel Pit Paddock report.
Renger van de Zande with the first pit stop of the year for Chip Ganassi Racing in their brand new Cadillac. This is fuel and tires. Now 38 sets of new Michelin tires for the week means that we should be seeing new tires at every pit stop opportunity for the DP category. These boys and girls know how to do pit stops. They're very well trained at it, and they've gone for a staggered option where they do the right rear and the left first front, and then the left rear and the right front last. So they're quite used to doing this. Some of the teams prefer to do one side at a time. Not Chip Ganassi Racing. It's the same way that they did their 4 GT pit stops. Fuel, tires, and Renger out for another stint.
There was also a pit stop just before those prototypes came in from the number one, I nearly said the other one, the number 1 Paul Miller Racing Lamborghini. Madison Snow in and out quite quickly, Shea. Was that a problem for that car?
Nope, just fuel only. Madison was running in quite a bit of traffic out on track, so they elected to pull him in, give him fuel, and give him a bit of fresh air to go set some faster lap times.
Okay, seems reasonable. One thing that we'll talk about when we get closer to it, Jeremy, but once again, the start of the IMSA WeatherTech SportsCar Championship also starts the Michelin Endurance Cup as well for all of the longer races this year, and there are interim points, almost like stage points, if you were watching a cup race, except we don't actually throw any yellows out at the various markers. Where are we set for those this year, and when are they handed out?
They are handed out at 6 hours, 12 hours, 18 hours, and then the end of the race. So that is certainly something the teams will focus on. A lot of the teams have a big focus on the Michelin Endurance Cup. It's a good little carrot to get. Certainly last year, you were just talking about it's now running the number 1 car, Paul Miller Racing Lamborghini. Because of COVID, they did not take part as originally scheduled in the entire championship last season. Instead, particularly after winning the 24 Hours at Daytona for Lamborghini, their concentration, their full effort was on the Michelin Endurance Cup, and each of the subsequent races they just tried to score as many points as they possibly could. So they might sort of kind of run a kind of an alternate strategy in order to have good track position at those critical points in the race where the points are given out, and it worked out perfectly for them, and they came away with that Michelin Endurance Cup Championship.
Hello to Barnaby Scarf, who's tuned in, and also for the first time at the watching the 24 Hours of Daytona, to Nicholas, who's tweeted at IMSA Radio using the hashtag R24 Radio. And Rob Chalmers asks a question that I'll set somebody onto. Jeremy, you may know this already. Is the Chip Ganassi Racing Cadillac a brand new tub, or one of the cars that were previously run by Junkos or Spirit of Daytona, or a car that has got some other history?
It's the Junkos car, in actual fact, and that's the car that was damaged. You remember that horrible crash that Victor Franzoni had at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, and then repaired afterwards, and repaired to absolutely pristine condition. In actual fact, the team, the Ganassi found out the car was available from Ricciardo, and they made a few calls around, including one to Spencer Pickett, actually, who'd been the last guy to drive that car after the accident. Spencer said that the car was great, so they said, okay, fine, let's go get it. So that is the car from the number 50 Junko car that's been run by Chip Ganassi Racing.
I've got a philosophical question here, and I know he's watching. Andy Blackmore, does Andy Blackmore have a spotter guide on the wall when he's watching, or does he know them off by heart because he's been working on them? Andy and Kira watching at the moment, and thank you for all your hard work, Andy, down through the years on spotterguides.com. Very good to know that you're still working hard, and plenty of his liveries as well in over the weekend that we've seen, both the Michelin Pilot Challenge and in IMSA WeatherTech SportsCar Championship, of which this is the first round for 2021, the 59th running of the Rolex 24 at Daytona. And the WeatherTech Porsche, after some time in the pit lane, Shea Adam, is heading back out with a little wiggle of the steering wheel, looking as pristine as it did before it was attacked by the BMW. How long was that car in the pits? That seems to have been there for a very long time indeed.
13 laps, John, 13 laps total, and it's going to have to come back in and serve that drive-through penalty within 4 laps of going out on the track. And of course, when it comes in to serve the penalty, it's not allowed to stop in its box. So if something isn't perfect, they're going to have to wait at least another opportunity to try and fix that. But we've had a slew of pit callers. It was a poor stop for the Meyer-Shank Racing team and their Acura. They had trouble on the left front tire change of that car. It was a good stop for the other Acura, though. That one belonging to Wayne Taylor Racing, the Konica Minolta bearing car. That one had a much cleaner stop. All of the Cadillacs came in. Everybody did fuel and tires, no driver change. But we do have a penalty for the 55 Mazda speeding on the pit lane plus 1 km/h over. It's a drive-through, unfortunately, though, for Ollie Jarvis, as the LMP2 stops are going on now. And I'm only seeing a couple of driver changes there. It's Gabby Aubrey in the 8 for Tower Motorsports, and Guido van der Garde, welcome to Daytona Racing in the 29 Racing Team Netherlands.
Jeremy, so it looks like it's going to be about 20-ish laps. There was a bit of yellow in that run for the prototypes. Felipe Nasr actually came in at the end of lap 22, but there was 3 full course caution laps within that. So that's about, at race pace, that's going to be around about 40 minutes. So that one's easy to remember. What do we think about the P2s and the other classes? What sort of pit stop strategy are they running if they're running to full beat?
P2's very similar. GT cars round about an hour, round about an hour. So it's a big change, particularly for that Ganassi team. They were used to making pit stops around about every hour. Now they're making them every 40 minutes. That's a lot more pit stops during the course of this race. A lot more work, yeah, and a lot more, a lot more opportunity for things to go wrong, quite frankly, because the pit stops can be, they are super stressful.
And that extra, the 20 minutes less between those pit stops that you can't get a little bit of rest in when you get in the middle of the night. Remember, these crews don't nip off for 6 hours in the middle of the night like our colleagues on TV do and leave us to hold the fort. 3 till 6 Eastern, by the way, is our Night Owls session this year with Rooftop Ray. He'll be taking over the TV coverage, and if you're in the US, you'll be able to see that without any block on IMSARadio.com on the live video, whilst we're providing you with the audio. But these crews, Jeremy, they're at the track for 24, and they sleep where they can, and I'm sure we'll see some shots. It's loud in the pit lane. They're not in pit garages as they are at Le Mans. They're under awnings, so it gets chilly overnight, but they'll still try and grab what shut-eye they can in between, hopefully, regular pit stops.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's
hard, mate.
It's not easy. It really is. These guys work super hard. I mean, the commitment it takes to be a mechanic in this championship is amazing, really. And the guys, they work so hard, and and there's they're really make a name for themselves if something goes wrong, quite frankly. That's the honest truth about it, which is not the way it should be at all. But they really are the unsung heroes of this sport, and that's why the drivers go to such lengths when they get out of the car at the end of the race to thank the guys who do work so hard. It's a challenge for the lead.
Finally, as we said, as things come to change, and it is a new leader then. That will be Philippe Albuquerque, Koenig Minolta Acura. Well, he was leading across the line, but Felipe Nasser held the inside, the left-hand side of the track going through turn 1 and into the infield. That's actually completely ruined the momentum that Albuquerque had, and that's given an opportunity to Renger van der Zande in the Chip Ganassi Cadillac. So it was Acura, Cadillac across the line, but Nasser has got back into the lead, and now it's side by side between Albuquerque and Nasser, and that one goes the way of Albuquerque. And just to show how close it is, like Deval says, oh come on you guys, you're having too much fun, I'll join in and go side by side with a little bit of an overlap coming out of the western hairpin as well. We were only saying just before the pit stops, Jeremy, it doesn't stay the same for very long. What it would look to me then is that as the stint goes on and the burn off the fuel, that Whelan car is very good indeed. Now, he did get a good jump away at the start from the green flag, but he has been caught a little bit here by the rest of the leading prototypes.
Yeah, he has, and I think we talked about earlier on, no one's going to push too hard in the very beginnings of the race, and they were all kind of just sort of running along quite happily on their own, making sure that they're comfortable in the car now. But all of a sudden, that number 10 car has come alive, because it started in the 5th position, it ran the 5th all the way through until lap 16, when he managed to get past Dane Cameron up into 4th position, and then after the pit stops, he went 2 laps longer than the first car to stop, which was 0-1. The number 10 car went 1 lap further than the previous leader, which had been that number 31 car, and then he came out pretty much on his tail, and now he's challenging and or gone through into the lead. So
an XX problem, Jeremy, excuse me, it's the Magnus car, new car for them, slightly different colour scheme, and it looks like a right rear issue. The tyre is down now. Contact, question mark, I don't know, but it's it doesn't matter how slow you're going, it's probably too fast for a tyre. It is John Potter who started the Magnus with Archangel number 44 Acura NSX in the Speed Racer livery, and he's limping back to the pits even as we speak. It happened just before, I think, he went into the bus stop. He's come through the bus stop, so he hasn't got too far to go. Shea will be keeping an eye on that. And the question for me is, did he get a little tap? No, answer no. That happened right in front of the 75 Sun Energy AMG GT, and they had to check right up. Meantime, the Dragon Speed Flex box car has gone around at the bus stop, but is now pointing in the right direction. And again, just caught that one out the corner of my eye. Didn't see if he jumped or he was pushed. It's the Rob Hoardis, Garrett Grist, Venus Vike and Ben Hanley, number 81 Orica that I was talking about there. And whilst we're talking about the prototypes, this from Hans, a question. He's a bit confused, he says. Why does it still say DPI? Shouldn't it be called LMDH from this year? Or is that launched from this year's 24 Hours of Le Mans? No, LMDH is the next generation of these DPI cars. That's the IMSA vision of the top class of sports car racing. The ACO have taken that on as LMDH. We won't see 2.0, DPI 2.0, i.e. LMDH ACO in AC all-speed cars until 2023 here at Daytona. Theoretically, the class is eligible for WEC and Le Mans this year, but there aren't any of them yet. So the top class will be made up of the hypercars, as they're called, Toyota and Glickenhaus, together with a recycled Rebellion R13, which has been rebadged as it's an Orica that Rebellion obviously paid for, and that's been recycled as Alpine. So they will all run in the LMH category, or as LMHs in the top class. You really have to call that top class something different from hypercar when you've got an LMH and an LMDH within it, and I think LMP1 would be just fine. Let's go to Shea Adam with this VP Racing Fuel Pit Paddock report. Bad week for Archangel, Shea.
It is, and John Potter has managed to bring the Acura into the pit lane with that flat right rear tire, or what's left of it, I should say. But Archangel with Magnus running this weekend, or actually this week in Daytona, because we have to go back a full calendar week, with 3 different cars in 3 different series. It was a crash to start things out in the IMSA Michelin Prototype Challenge, as for the number 7 machine, the LMP3 car that they run there. Then yesterday in the Michelin Pilot Challenge, that's where I was trying to go, they were running in an Aston Martin that was actually a replacement car to their original car, which had an engine issue. That too had some right rear suspension damage to that car. So that means that all 3 of their cars so far this week in Daytona have been plagued with issues. Hopefully that's them done and out of the way. John Potter, a new tire and back out of the pit lane. Although there is some damage, some debris out on track, and I'm just hearing Potter's gonna have to come back down the pit lane again. Penalty, wheel rotation while on the jack stand. That is a drive-through.
Yeah, the debris at the bus stop, there's a red and yellow rubbish on the track flag there. It can often mean slippery surface, as Jeremy and I know to our cost in our racing careers down through the year. Really what it means is there's something on the track that shouldn't be there. It could be fluid, it could also be bits of car as well. There is a word that sort of half rhymes with track that begins with CR on the track, but I won't say it. That's what I always think of that red and yellow flag for, and I think that was for some tyre debris from the number 44 tyre and bodywork debris as well. How time flies, Jeremy. We're 50 minutes plus into this race already, and it feels like we've done 3 laps in some respects.
Are you serious?
We are coming up to the first racing hour completed in 7 minutes time. Can you believe that?
No, that's amazing. Time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it? It's a really interesting start to the race. Also interesting, isn't it, that we saw the number 10 car of Philippe Albuquerque briefly get past Felipe Nasser for the lead in the race. Since then, Felipe says, no, and he has checked out now. He's pulled out rapidly to a 7-second lead. The gap went out to 3 seconds, then 4, then 6, and now 7 seconds between first and second at the completion of lap 30.
Hello to Lucy Payne, team manager at BHK Motorsports, running LMP2s and LMP3s at ALMS. Simon Tibbett watching as well. He's one of the drivers from Sorg Rennsport BMW in a variety of the categories that we cover. This is a big race, Jeremy. This is exactly what this race always used to be, a real international feel, plenty of international drivers and manufacturers, and it's only going to get better. That question we were talking about with LMDH, we know that Porsche and Audi want in to LMDH, and both in their press releases mentioned coming to places on the IMSA calendar, as well as racing in the World Championship and at Le Mans, like Sebring, like Daytona, and the opportunity, of course, for customer cars to do the full season. And we heard earlier this week that Acura are going to continue in the top class here with a commitment to the new DPI 2.0 LMDH from 2023. It's a good time, despite everything going on in the world, for endurance racing. Change of position, by the way, as I was going through that, as the Philippe Albuquerque driven Renger van der Zande, excuse me, driven 0-1, has just got by Philippe Albuquerque, so that's a new third place there. I'm really excited, Jeremy. This could be a time when we were all looking gloomy. We've got 49 cars here this year. We've got manufacturers recommitting. We've got new manufacturers coming in. We had a new Toyota in the Michelin Pilot Challenge yesterday, and it led the race. It's good, and it's good for IMSA.
Oh, it's tremendous for IMSA. Completely agree with you. Absolutely magnificent for IMSA. These are exciting times for sports car racing. This LMDH new regulations have really caught, I think, the manufacturer's eye. You know, it's very cost effective in international motor racing terms. So I think that's why we're seeing already, you know, 3 manufacturers have jumped on the bandwagon. I'm sure we're going to see more over the next few months or so. And the bad news is we've got to wait a couple of years before we see all those cars. But it's great to see the manufacturers committing so early to it. And I think these are, you know, really the future bodes very, very well indeed. Another quick note, by the way, you talked about Philippe Albuquerque losing a place there to Renger van der Zande. So all of a sudden, Albuquerque has gone from the lead to 7 seconds back from the leader, and he's now lost 2 other positions. We need to keep an eye on that Konica Minolta Acura car number 10. I wonder whether the pit wall got onto him and said, look, you don't need to push too hard at this stage in a race. Just take it easy, throttle back, take your time. So that's something we'll follow up on and find out, hoping there isn't any sort of any difficulty for that number 10 car.
Andy Holbury, one of my former colleagues at Autosport magazine, tuned in as well. He's been enjoying this week wherever you are in the world. Good to have your company. 107.9 around the circuit. Sirius 216 XM 202, and thanks to them for loaning us their airwaves, not just for this IMSA WeatherTech SportsCar Championship race, but we'll have the whole season on Sirius XM as well. And if you're further afield, IMSARadio.com. Sound, obviously, because it's IMSA Radio, but also the live video tab with the full streaming international feed and our commentary on there as well. At IMSA Radio, hashtag 24R24 Radio. Another set of stops, this time for the GT cars. Shea Adam.
We've seen a lot of fuel and tires put on the cars, not necessarily driver changes, although a couple ones worthy of note. In the GTLM class, we have now got James Collado behind the wheel of the 62 Risi Competizione with a brand new driver's side door, so the impact from the side of that one is now missing. Simon Mann has taken over for Matteo Tassoni, who started the 21 AF Corse Ferrari in the GTD class. Lawrence Vantor, making his GTD debut, is now behind the wheel of the FAC Motorsport Porsche. And that one is interesting because you've got Canada meeting Belgium. And as Lawrence said, well, maple syrup goes very well on Belgian waffles.
Going down to the first hour of the race having been completed. We can be somewhere near 35 laps by the end of the first hour, and we've had just that one full course yellow for about 8 minutes, so we've been green since then, 42 minutes. So take a quick rundown of how things stand with a Mazda in race update. In GTD, we'll start with the cars with the green markers on them. And leading the category in 21st position overall is Allegra Motorsports in their Mercedes AMG GT3. They've just come into the pits for Daniel Morad, so they'll give that up. That will pass the lead to Maxwell Root for TF Sports Aston Martin. That's the number 97. And then in third position, Frank Montecalvo is in the pits at the moment for Vassar Sullivan and the Lexus number 12, excuse me. His teammate's just gone through. Then it's the number 1 of Madison Snow. Then it's Jan Halen for Wright Motorsport. So they're in the middle of a pit stop cycle at the moment. GT Le Mans is much easier. 2 Corvettes from the Racing Competizione Ferrari from Team RLL. And that's 3, 4, 62 and 24. They're just at the bottom end of the teens in the overall standings. LMP2, Ben Keating leads from PR1 Matheson Motorsport in the Orica at number 52. He's got about 25 seconds on Roberto Lacour for Chetila Racing in the Dallara, number 47. Dennis Anderson in third for High Class Racing has about 5 seconds on Frits van Aert in the Jumbo sponsored Racing Team Netherlands Orica LMP 207. It's the 29 car. LMP3, it's Riley Motorsport that leads in the 91. Ligier for Performance Tech in second. About a second between them. Gar Robinson 6.5 further back in third for Riley in the 74 car. Then the red, white and blue Sean Creech Motorsport machine in third, ahead of John Bennett for Core Motorsport in the 54. And of course I say that they start their pit stops. So at the front of the field with an hour now completed, Felipe Nasr leads by 6.5 seconds from Renger van der Zande. Whelen Engineering from Cadillac Chip Ganassi, and the third place car is also a Cadillac 3101 and number 5, the red and white Mustang sampling JDC Miller car, ahead of the first of the Acuras in the hands of Felipe Albuquerque, the number 10 black and blue Konica Minolta car, ahead of the light coloured Jimmy Johnson driven number 48. What other number could it be? Jimmy Johnson reunited with Chad Knaus, by the way. He's on the box for Jimmy, and working together again, those two, in the Ally Cadillac. And the top 6 made up by Dane Cameron, about another 20 seconds further back for Meerschacht Racing with Curb Agajanian, and that is another Acura. That's how it stands. Just over the hour of racing completed, and the next hour at the 59th running of the Daytona 24 Hours of Daytona starts right now. So, Jeremy, first hour in the book.
Yes, indeed. And yeah, there was one caution period, but you know, that's yes. Other than that, it's been good. I was just looking at the pace number 55 car. Of course, had the problem getting out of the pits before the start of the race, so had to work his way through the pack. Then I had that drive-through penalty, 1 kilometre over on the speed limit in pit lane. That's annoying. The car certainly hasn't made up any ground after that, but I think at the early stages of this race, in fact, I've just got a note back on that one. The team, no need to make up any ground at this stage. There's going to be lots of cautions, reckon the team. So just settle in, run your laps, stay in contention. The Mazda, it's about 56 seconds off the lead at the moment, but no angst there at Mazda Motorsports.
Yeah, it's a bit of a worry, isn't it, when you can't get off at the start? That will have worried them. But you hope that that's just maybe we didn't warm it up quite right, or was it a software glitch? Did it have to be turned on and off again? More battles at the front of the field, Jeremy, with Renger van der Zande and Loic de Waal together with traffic right in front of them. It's the Lexus of Vasser Sullivan. That's the car, I think, that's leading its class now again after the pit stop. Yes, it is leading its class again after the pit stop cycle. But this is on. I mean, right from the start, gone are the days when everybody cruises around at 85%. We talked in our Porsche Keys to the Race about being there at high noon tomorrow for the 3 hour and 40 minute sprint to the end. But in reality now, there's not a lot of coasting in these races. You've got to go from the start.
Yeah, you're right, but within limits. You don't want to push too hard. You talked about GTD there. Yes, it's Aaron Telitz who now leads in car number 14 for Vasser Sullivan Lexus. Madison Snow up into second place in the Lamborghini, car number, well, usually 48, but won this weekend. The main reason for the big leap up the order there from the number 1 car would be the fact its first pit stop was halfway through that stint.
Correct.
The first stint, effectively. So therefore took on a lot less fuel than everybody else. A much faster pit stop. Madison Snow doing the job since then, up into second place in the class. A few more updates, by the way, from Larry Holt at Multimatic on the Mazda Motorsports car. It was I guess he reckons the gearbox controller, as he said, threw a fit on the grid. But other than that's been fixed now. It should be okay. And after that pit speed penalty, they just dial back the electronics again a little bit to make sure that doesn't happen next time. But Oliver Jarvis has been told zero risk in the early stages.
I wonder who told him that. I bet that was Lena Geared.
Indeed so. But then Larry Holt will be looking over his shoulder. I can assure you of that. But yeah, Lena's been around this business. She is so highly respected. She is one of the best race engineers, not only in endurance sports car racing, but in motor racing in general. She doesn't need any reminding about anything at all, really, does she?
No, and her sister Tina as well was Formula One engineer in the test team for a little while. It's something of a family business for the Geared ladies. Adam, you were telling us about that Madison Snow pit stop strategy. It does seem to have worked. They got out of traffic. He's then got cracking and got that car rolling very nicely indeed to make up. He's been out there half an hour, 32 minutes actually, 19 laps now as he's just gone through. You've got some news for us on the there you go, $5 in the jar. The Vass, I've done all the way into the race, and I've had the Vassar Sullivan car that was in the pits earlier on. Shea.
Yes, Frankie Montecalvo brought the number 12 in from the lead of the race, and then a very lengthy stop. They were having transponder issues. It's not the first car we've heard of this happening to all weekend. They're resolved now. They did have to put a new one in the car, but it meant a little bit longer in the pit lane, and it means that Frankie Montecalvo is down running last in the class right now, but he is back out there. He is turning laps. They were worried that perhaps it would stop registering him, so now that problem has been solved. The good news is we know the car is fast as it led the race. The bad news is it has 18 cars to pass now to try and get back up there.
Yeah. Just checking the lap times. Last time around, a 36.6 for the leader, Felipe Nasr. He's stretched out to 5 seconds now, but a 35.6 for Renger van der Zande, who in this part of the stint, Jeremy, is finding a piece of a little bit of pace, should I say. Been out for 17, 18 laps, the leaders now, so coming towards the end of their fuel, and this has been a full green stint, so this will give us a really good idea when the leaders come in a couple of laps time what's going on. I have also, by the way, got Ollie Jarvis with an extra pit stop in that 55 car. I don't know if Larry said anything.
Yeah, that was the drive-through.
That was the drive. Of course it was. Yes, of course it was. My apologies.
They kind of dial back the electronics a little bit, so slight change to the software on that car to make sure it doesn't happen again.
So what do we think? 20 laps then, Jeremy? They had a bit of yellow in the other one. They're on that. Renger van der Zande is on his 20th lap now. Felipe Nasr's on his 19th. Actually, that's only 28, 29 minutes. I think they've probably got a few more laps in those cars, haven't they?
Yeah, should have.
Right. Let's see how we go then. Should be looking at least 22.
36 minutes is the first pit stop for the 0-1 car. So it's been 32 minutes since then. Yeah, so they should be able to go a few more laps yet.
Big.
A couple of 3 laps. 21 laps I think they should be able to do.
So that's going to be what they're running 150s at the moment. So it's going to be 30 odd minutes, 35 minutes, isn't it? Big debate going on Twitter at IMSA Radio about which is the best looking DPI at the moment. It seems to be the Mazda, although many people preferred it in the Soul Red Crystal. It's running in Alpine White this year. Join in the chat at IMSA Radio, hashtag R24 Radio. If you'd like to join in on that, keeping an eye on there. as well.
Interesting in GTLM, two Corvettes back to running in tandem again, John. First and second, now the four car. We had a little glitch before the first round of pit stops, shortly after the caution period, wasn't it? That fell back a little bit, but making his way back, has made his way back up onto the tail of Garcia. James Collado, around about 5 seconds, he's slipped back in second position. Won't be too worried about that. And a similar margin back to John Edwards in the BMW in fourth position. Meanwhile, in LMP2, Ben Keating, he's extended his lead now. He's just been lapped, I think, by the overall race leader, but he's got 41 seconds in hand over Roberto Lacorte for Chetlar Racing in the Dallara. That's 52 ahead of the number 47. Dennis Anderson also doing a nice job for high class racing, running in third position, about 14 seconds or so behind Lacorte, and then behind Anderson, Eric Lux, Fritz Van Eerd, and John Ferrano and Stephen Thomas, all separated by around about 10 seconds. They'd be the top 7 in LMP2.
Alistair says, what's with the pit lane exit restrictions? Looks pretty tight. When you use the road course, Alistair, it has been this way for certainly in the endurance races, that they go on the inside of turn 1, and there's a wall to protect them there. Also, you'll notice that there are a couple of what look like cones sitting at the... Oh, I'll come back to that in a moment. It's another problem for the number 81, the flex box Dragon Speed car, and that car has been off the circuit and hit the guardrail at turn 1. So just on the other side of that pit wall I was talking about, it's Rob Hodes, and he's done damage to the car. That's going to be a long way back home. Right rear toe link, I would say, has gone on that, Jeremy. Just looked at like he might have also done some front end damage to that car as well. Down at turn 1, he was on his own, just locked it up, got onto the dirt on the outside and couldn't get the car turned, and when he hit the grass, pretty much even the dry grass, he was pretty much a passenger from that point on.
He was, wasn't he? Yes, that car took on him pretty rapidly indeed. Yeah, that's unfortunate for Rob. He was he lost a little bit of ground early on, but there's still, as long as there's not too much damage, you can get away with it. You can get it back to the pits and get that repaired. He's about due for a pit stop in any case within the next lap or two. Talking to which the number 01 car once again led the field onto the pit lane. So that was a 21 lap stint for Renger van der Zande before scheduled pit stop there for Chip Ganassi Racing in that 01 Cadillac.
Hello to Sarah Rigby, who's cheering on all the advantages, of course. And this year for you, Georg Buda has asked on at IMSA Radio with the hashtag R24 Radio, what are the minimum drive times in the Pro-Am classes? Now, we talked about rule. You and Jeremy have read the rule book as we've got the Felipe Nasser Whelan car into the pit lane. I'll keep an eye on that. You tell us about Pro-Am drive times.
Very simple. All silver and bronze drivers in the LMP3, LMP2, and GTD cars must drive for 4.5 hours total during the course of the race. There is a no more than 4 hours in any 6-hour period stint that applies to every driver in every category, and that also applies to Ben Keating, by the way, who's driving multiple cars, so he has 9 hours to complete between 2 cars. He may not drive for 4 hours in any 6-hour period between both of those cars it applies to. And for the pro classes, just for fun, it's a 2-hour minimum drive time for both of those classes as well. It was fuel and tires for Felipe Nasser. He stayed aboard and left the pit lane, and it's the exact same thing for Renger van der Zande, but I have a feeling we've got a caution coming. The pit lane's getting quite busy.
And that's because Rob Hood has got to the bus stop. You said 4.5 hours for the silver and bronze. 4.5 hours each or between them in the car?
Each.
Right, okay. Right, so there you go, Georg. That's your answer for that. Really smart driving, Jeremy Shaw, by Rob Hodes. He stopped before the bus stop to make sure that all the traffic got through, and then he shortcut the bus stop. That might actually cause him a bit of problems. So I'm not sure he can get all the lock on that he needs. Might have to do a little bit of Austin Powers style 3-point turn in between the tyres there. But where he is at the moment, at least he's not in a dangerous spot going slowly through the bus stop. It still might bring out a yellow. We've been green now for a decent amount of time, actually, just coming up to an hour, 59 minutes. Yeah. We have been green, but heads up driving by Rob.
Indeed, yes, but not quick enough to avoid a full course caution. But at least he's got the car out of harm's way. This is certainly for the cars that have already made their pit stops in LMP in the DPI. Just I guess number 5, number 35, 31, the number 5, and the number 01. This is good news for them, because when the caution comes out and the pits are opened, all of the other DPI cars will come into the pits. But the number 48 car is in now. That might be emergency service, actually, because I don't think the pits have been opened yet, have they?
No, no, he got in beforehand. Jimmy Johnson, of course he did. He came in at 21:55. At 55 minutes past the hour and 40 seconds, and the yellow flag came out at 55 minutes past the hour and 56 seconds. So he was in 16 seconds before the yellow was called. That is that kind of communication between Chad Knaus and Jimmy Johnson that won those 7 championships.
Yeah, I mean, he was a little bit fortunate, because he was that was about how far he was behind the other guys that had already been in. So because he probably otherwise would have been in on the next lap, because he had gone a lap further on the first round of pit stop. So that'll help them. Jimmy was doing a nice, respectable job. That's all he wanted to do. He was about 20 seconds behind the kind of battle for second, third and fourth, and maintaining that position, and really wasn't losing any ground at all to Dane Cameron behind him, or to number 55 Mazda, which after its drive-through penalty was further back in line as well. So good opening couple of stints here for Jimmy Johnson.
The irony is, of course, as soon as the yellow flag came out, Rob Hoders extricated himself and the number 81 Dragon Speed car from his predicament in the run-through area at the bus stop, which is 3 very substantial tyre walls there that you have to weave your way through. His problem was with the front end damage to the right front steering arms. He couldn't get enough lock on, so he just had to wiggle it through. Let's take a VP Racing Fuel pit and paddock update. Shane Adam has news on cars with problems.
The LMP3 machine from 47 Motorsports, car number 7 of Ryan Norman, back out. It followed Simon Pagenaud out of the pit lane and back out onto the racetrack. That's the good news. The bad news is he's down 30 laps on the class leader, so it's a long night ahead for 47. But with so few cars on track, they're still expecting to be contenders over the course of this race.
Well, and they're full season, Shea, for IMSA WeatherTech SportsCar Championship, or are they just doing the long races?
I have not heard yet if they are going to be full season or not, or who their driver lineup would possibly be.
Well, I suppose the thing is, if you're running and other people have problems later on, they'll be hoping there's no more issues for them. Every 2 minutes you get a lap back, so somebody needs to change something significant or gets a couple of problems, loses 45-50 minutes an hour, then you back up with them again. That's the thinking. There's something very special, I think, about us seeing 24.0 or 24:00:00 at the start of a race just before we come to the green. That always just gives me little goosebumps, and we've already cracked through nearly an hour and a half, an hour and 20 minutes of this race. We're in our second full course yellow, and beautifully timed pit stop for the Ally number 48. It is Philippe Albuquerque who leads, and don't forget what Jeremy was saying earlier on. We did get some people who sort of preempted this. Felipe Nasser came in after 21 laps. This is now the 23rd lap for Dane Cameron in second, and Philippe Albuquerque, who leads. Ollie Jarvis is on his 22nd. Van der Zande, Nasser, the Jimmy Johnson car. Who got into the Jimmy Johnson car, by the way? Simon Pagenaud, thank you, Shea. You get the 5 points for fastest finger first. Well done. So, Jeremy, that's going to shake things up a little bit at the sharp end, because quite clearly those top runners at the moment are going to have to come and make a pit stop, and therefore, okay, they're not going to lose a whole load of real estate, but they are going to lose their position on the timing screen.
Indeed so, yes. Yes. It'll be Felipe Nasr who will lead again at the restart, and the top 3 cars right now, number 10, 60 and 55, they will come in during this full course caution. They will go back out again at the back of the whole pack, but when other cars make their pit stops in the other categories, and before we go back to the restart, there will be a reset of the field, whereby each of the classes will move back behind their respective leaders. So it's not a major disadvantage.
Shea, we've got one of the Acura's in, and the pits are still closed.
Yes, they are. We have not seen the pits open for prototypes yet. That was emergency service, a splash of fuel for the number 60, and Dane Cameron, who does owe us a pit stop, also in. I'm seeing Oliver Jarvis, and who else is that? Oh, Dennis Anderson from the LMP2 ranks in car number 20. These cars will be held at the end of the pit lane, though, because, of course, the safety car train hasn't finished going by yet, so the red light is on. Emergency service basically means you can come in when the pits are closed if you're going to run out of fuel on the track, take 5 seconds worth of fuel, but then when the pits are open once again and the racetrack is green, you have to come back down the pit lane and complete you can do your full service when the pits are open for the prototypes again, but then you have to serve an additional trip down through the pit lane, effectively giving yourself your own drive-through. But a drive-through is better than stopping out on course and causing a caution. Yeah,
emergency service for 5 seconds maximum of fuel, or to fix anything. Like, for example, IMSA do not want you driving around till the pit's open with a punctured tyre, let's say, and driving around on the rim. Came in quite some time ago now, after a couple of incidents. One I remember particularly at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, where things got a bit untidy, shall we say, with the people pitting, trying to get into the pits before the pits open, then staying out with damaged cars, etc., etc. So that is the whole idea behind the philosophy, if you will, of emergency service, beautifully explained by Shea Adam in that VP Racing Fuel Pit and Paddock report. So, in our Porsche keys to the race, got to be perfect in the pits. We've already seen some issues there. Pick your passes. Well, we've seen a few people make some less than tidy ones, but clearly there's been a huge amount of very, very smart driving out there. And rules rule. A couple of little mistakes, which at the moment has not caused major grief for anybody. The pass around rule is the one you don't want to get wrong, because it's not as if race control, Jeremy, comes on to the radio to all the cars and says, right, it's going to be 3, 7, 29, 54, etc., etc. to pass around. They are told the pass around is about to happen. If you are eligible for it on the pass around and the wave bys, you are expected to know that and do it yourself. And if you get a wave by wrong, you can be stopped for minutes, because it's really punitive, as it should be, of course.
Yeah, indeed. It's more than a lapse penalty. That's the timing of that. So yeah, that's something you want to avoid. It is absolutely up to the teams. Drivers, of course, they all have spotters here. They also all have people in the timing stands as well who are paying attention to who is where in respect to themselves and their class leaders. So it's something you shouldn't get wrong, but it does happen from time to time, and sometimes it's not done on purpose. It's generally a mistake, but it's a very, very costly mistake. So for all these teams coming in and making that emergency service, that's just really unlucky. That certainly isn't a mistake in any way. It's just the timing of the caution period was such that they would do a pit stop. The pits are closed, and what do? Do they run out of fuel on racetrack, or do they come into the pits? Answer: you come into the pits. But as Shea was explaining there beautifully, You're only allowed to take on minimal fuel, just enough to make sure that you can get around to when the pits are open. Then you make your proper stop, and then you go back out again. So really, it's not going to cost either of those teams, the DPI or the LMP2 car, the high-class car, any major dramas as well. They will be at the back of their respective packs for the restart, but no worse than that.
Super quick stop, Shea Adam, for the 0-1. Renger van der Zande, and that's staying in the Cadillac Chip Ganassi racing car. Was that fuel only?
It was, and it was just a splash of fuel because Renger had been in not too long ago, as had Loic Duval and Felipe Nasser. Nasser stayed out on the track, as did Simon Pagenaud, who just got the car handed over to him from Jimmy Johnson. But it's interesting to see that they would elect to bring Renger back down and top him off, extending this stint for a little bit longer. But I mean, it's Renger. You've got him in the Cadillac. Good luck getting him out.
Well, that tells me two things. One, they're extremely happy with that 0-1 car, and particularly, Jeremy, they will have had a chance to look at the first set of tyres that came off that car, and they'll have examined the Michelins and say, do you know what, they're all right. So we can squeeze a few more laps out of them with a fuel-only stop. And that actually is good data, and giving us the opportunity to see how the teams are thinking, even this early on in the race, with just on an hour and a half gone.
Yeah, for the 0-1 team there, you know, they were coming in a lap earlier than everybody else, so they want to get back on plane with all the other guys, if you like. That's why, even though they just made a stop a few laps ago, come in, top it off, and then they will be back on an even keel with at least the other Cadillacs and effectively the other DPIs as well, John.
Yeah. Just seeing, we're going to get at the split, of course, which will put everybody back together at the front of the field in our Michelin countdown to green. Jeremy, you were telling us about how the class split is going to work on the restarts. It wasn't the same at the start. We had the prototypes in front of the GT cars, but on the class split for all the subsequent restarts, and I don't think we mentioned this on either of the other two restarts, there has been a bit of talking to the teams, looking at the lap times, and there's been a slight change to what we saw at the green flag at the start of the race, at least.
Sorry, John.
On the restarts, the way the class split works.
Yes, the class, there will be the restart. Yeah, we had the split start before the start of the race, but for each of the restarts after that, they will all be in class order, but not in. There won't be a split between the GT cars and the LM and the prototype cars. So it's going to be very, very tricky at the restarts for all of the, particularly the lesser classes. And I think it's important to say also, John, isn't it, that the prototypes, DPI cars all can go behind each other, but the restarts are complicated, let's put it that way. But the rules are designed to try and make sure that nobody is inconvenienced by the timing of a yellow. That's really basically what it boils down to.
Hello to Martin Short and to Ian Flux and a whole bunch of people who are swapping notes on this race on Facebook at the moment. Don't forget the Radio Show Limited Listeners Collective is a great place for chatting to like-minded people as the pits are open now for GT Daytona and GT Le Mans. Shea Adam.
We had pretty much everyone down the pit lane at that time in the GTD category, save for the 23 Heart of Racing Aston Martin and three cars further back down the field. But everyone in GTLM also coming into the pit lane. Fuel and tires for both of the Corvettes. No driver changes there yet, as we are still waiting to hear if we're going to get driver changes for them. But the BMW that came in, the one that interests me was the 25. We saw them practicing a nose change the other night during night practice. Well, now they've actually had to utilize that nose change practice. I believe it's still Bruno Spengler behind the wheel of the car. But remember, he went into the back of Kevin Estra's Porsche off the start, creating all that chaos, despite the fact that we had a split start to get things started. But that BMW still in the pit lane, getting this change done under caution, meaning they're not losing track time necessarily, but it's still something that they would rather they didn't have to do.
Yeah, and he did get instant responsibility laid at his nose, as it were, so I had a drive through to that. Hello to Andrew Mather, who is celebrating a birthday in the UK. Fish and chips in the oven, he says as he speak. Got some pulled pork lined up for later in the race, which may serve as an early breakfast based on UK hours. Culinary normality goes out of the window in a 24-hour race. Says I have various other snacks as well. Well, thank you very much to Sacred Coffee, which will be getting me through the night. And my old mate Tiffany Dell tweeted me earlier on. And Tiff, I'm using one of your perfect power slide mugs because it's nice and big, easy to keep hold of, and it will be a split in the 24 hours, particularly in the night owl shifts, between Sacred Coffee and Tregothnan Tea. Never underestimate the restorative powers of a good cup of tea. But that's out of my Tiff Perfect Power Slide mug. At IMSA Radio, hashtag R24 Radio. Just starting, Jeremy, to lose some of the daylight. The headlights just shining, showing up a little more on the cameras. Under an hour now to official sunset, but it will be getting dark probably about 20 minutes before then, and 13 hours and 11 minutes till sunrise. It's going to be, Mr. Shaw, a long night.
Yes, it is. It's and this is nighttime Daytona is so much fun for me. Always the most enjoyable time of the race was around about 1-2 in the morning. Okay, we're running a slightly different schedule this year, aren't we, with a slightly later start. So maybe a little bit before that, but just around about halfway through the race, in the middle of the night, it's always a great time of day at the racetrack, from my perspective. When you're there, the sights and the sounds and the smells just seem that little bit more vibrant at that time in the night, and there's always drama too, it seems, that time in the night as well.
It's there is something about racing in the dark, and anyone who's listened to IMSA Radio, or any one of the Radio Show Limited channels and races that we cover around the world, you'll have heard me saying this before, but there's almost something a bit naughty about racing in the dark, and I know that sounds slightly childish, but I kind of mean it to say that most sports go on during the day, or all right, floodlit football and that, but they don't go on all night, do they? And when you race right through the night, and the cars sound different at night, and strange things happen at night, and you see the glowing brake discs, the rotors, the pop, pop, pop on the down change, and the little bursts of flame, it almost seems like you're seeing something that you shouldn't really be watching. You're having a peek into a nether world, and I always feel that about motor racing in the dark, and 24 hours in 24-hour racing in particular. Now, all right, I know it's pretty well lit around here, but that just adds another dimension to it, Jeremy. It's not the same as driving in the daylight. Even here at Daytona, perspectives change, shadows change. It is different.
It is, and it's a great feeling. I've done a few 24-hour races. I just love driving at night time. Some drivers don't like it so much, but others do. And I was always pretty lucky, at least in my youth. I had pretty good night vision, so to speak. My eyes were pretty good at becoming accustomed to nighttime. And I love driving at night, whether it's on the road or the racetrack. And the racetrack in the 24-hour race, when you're out there yourself, just brilliant fun. But you just get those little. It's hard to describe the differences, except for the fact that they're kind of surreal in some sort of way, but just a lot of fun too.
I agree with you, Jeremy. Whether it's on the road, driving sensibly within the speed limits, obviously, as we always do, or on the track, and I, like you, have been fortunate enough to do some night races, not at very well lit tracks. I've got to tell you straight away, Anglesey, Circuit of the Americas, I love it. I absolutely love it. There's a I think there's a sense of when you're in the car, and I've heard people at the Nürburgring say this, there's less distractions in some respects, and for me, who doesn't drive enough or very well, that's probably just as well. I can focus on my braking point, my turning point, and there's almost, the darkness gives you that focus, that almost tunnel vision, because you can't see what's going on. Oh, what's that? Oh, I missed my that, you know, you can't do that. It's I tried to explain it to somebody. It's almost like when video games first came out and you didn't have very powerful computers, you turned the detail off so you couldn't see the grandstands or the trees or the lovely detail around the track, but what you could see was the track, and the track becomes your focus. And I love getting into a rhythm driving at night, again, whether it's on the road or on a racetrack. You're using different parts of your senses, you're using different parts of your eyesight to read where the road goes and where your headlights are pointing if it's road driving, and using the clues and how the headlights are reflecting back. I think it's magnificent. I did some rallying when I was in the early part of my motor racing career, both as a driver and as a navigator. And you know, road rallies, as there still were in the UK in those days, up in the wilds of Northumberland, where the first car goes off at midnight and 1 minute on a Saturday night into a Sunday morning, up in some of the roads in Northumberland. It was just outstanding. It was great. I'm with you with that one, Joe.
I did all that stuff too. I did a lot of night rallying. That's how.
It's great.
One of the things that really picked the bug for me, and as a navigator actually.
Yeah, me too.
Just sensational fun, fantastic.
Oh, we could be getting to talk about our potties and all of that when we go on, and it's not what you think if you don't know about your road rallies. Shay, Adam, before we go green, can we have a VP Racing Fuel Pit and Paddock update, please?
Yes, you may. I've just gotten a text from Kenton Cook, and thank you very much to him for remembering to send us information throughout the course of the race. We saw the pole sitting number 6 Duquesne of Milner Motorsports having some issues. It did go back behind the wall. Bent tie rod from the left front that was fixed. There was still something slightly askew there. They think it might be a right rear tie rod as well, so they're trying to get a hold of that. But unfortunately, this does not classify them as their 8-minute pit stop, which all LMP3 cars need to serve over the course of the race. That is specifically meant for brake changes, and that we'll be seeing a little bit later on.
Laura Plattman, hello Laura, very, very talented photographer and Leica ambassador, writes very well as well, and rides off-road motorcycles, rebuilds old Land Rovers, and does a whole host of really cool things. Laura has tweeted in, she said, I've watched so many movies in the past few months, I'm expecting to see Steve McQueen, Christian Bale, Matt Damon and Paul Newman in this race. Yes, we've all been doing a bit of that. Been doing a lot of reading as well, which I've thoroughly enjoyed. And Nate Damsel says, so good to see a race in its right calendar slot after last year's. X-Cluster and Dan and I all watching in different houses, socially distanced between Kent and Essex in the UK. Still under yellow here, and I'm not entirely... Is that just the DPI split that's taken this long, Jeremy? Yes, it is, I think, isn't it?
Well, yeah, for people who are not familiar with the IMSA regulations, after the pit stops are all made, there's another reset of the field so that every car in each class that is in between the safety car and the class leader, therefore has not been lapped, is allowed to go past the safety car and run around to the back of the pack. So it hasn't gained any positions, but it has gained its track position, so it's just behind all the other cars on the lead lap. During this caution period, in LMP2, there were 2 cars that stayed out when everybody else came into the pits, number 51 and number 18. Both of those 2 cars now are back on the lead lap. The number 51 car, by the way, driven by Austin Dillon, the NASCAR driver, and the same in a couple of other classes as well. So yeah, with 49 cars here, it just takes a little bit more perhaps than usual to get that field reset, and I think once we get into the race, it'll happen a bit more quickly.
It's going to be 25 minutes that we've been under yellow by the end of this, which I know some of you will be finding frustrating, as will the teams, for a car that was managed to get itself moving again. But once you've committed, it's not my job to defend any of the regulations, but what I will say by way of explanation is once you've committed to the yellow, you pretty much then have to go through all of the processes that Jeremy's described, because if you don't, you will disadvantage something. All of these things, the pass around, the wave by, the reset of the field, they're all done to mitigate the intervention of the safety car. In a single class, Formula One, touring cars, NASCAR, it's not so important. But when you've got now 5 classes on the track and people are getting caught through no fault of their own between the safety car and their leader, so their leader has gone around and got a lap on them. So that's why all of this has to happen. So once you've committed to doing it, you pretty much have to do it so that you're not disadvantaging, making a disadvantage situation for people in some of the classes other than the top class. And we've all seen it before, and we've all complained about it before in other series that are multi-class, where all of a sudden a great class battle in GT Le Mans or GTE or whatever is split up by a lap because of where the safety car comes out. And that's why it does take longer than we'd like it to, but that's why it's done. Could it be done other ways? Well, that's a question for another day. Code 60. But Jeremy doesn't like Code 60, so that's why we don't have it in IMSA.
Yeah, they do listen to me on occasion. No, I mean, it's a great system. It makes a better race out of it. Let's face it. That's why we're all here to have a better motor race, and that's what these regulations do. And if it means spending an extra 5 minutes under caution period, I'll go for that every single time. So, hey, just a couple of notes in LMP. We talked about LMP2 in GT. LM, the 5 cars that haven't had a problem are all in contention now and back together again, so to speak. We had a couple of problems earlier on. Number 4 car, which is now leading, and also the one of the BMW 35 car, which is now back up with everybody else. LMP3, Rasmus Lind still leads that for Performance Tech. He did not make a pit stop during that caution period, however, but he does lead the class over Gar Robinson, that's number 38 car, over Gar Robinson 74, Wayne Boyd now driving number 33 car, and John Bennett in the 54 for Court Autosport. In GTD, 2 cars again did not make a pit stop during that caution period. They lead the class. That's Ian James, a Harter Racing Team Aston Martin, Michel Goikhberg in the number 19 GRT Grasser Racing Team Lamborghini. All of the other guys did come into the pits during that sequence. They are led by number 97, the TF Sport Aston, with Maxwell Root still driving that car. Aaron Tielitz in the Vassar Sullivan Lexus. Russell Ward in the Women Racing Mercedes at number 1457. And then Jan Halen, who'd moved up well during that previous period, in number 16, Wright Motorsports Porsche, rounding out the top 6.
Jeremy Shaw with that Mazda in race update. Hello to Simon Strang and Finley. Clearly the next generation being brought up right there, Mr. Strang, well done. And very quickly before we go green, it seems we may not be. On a couple of things we were talking about earlier on, particularly on the movies, Jesse Young says, I'm expecting a dog named Enzo to pop up at some point in this race as well. Just one more lap. Well, it might be just one more lap of yellow here. And Matt obviously has been a rally navigator. Very nearly had my eye out once, moving the potty around the map while holding a sharpened pencil in the same hand. Rookie error there, mate. Rookie error.
I used to use I started off using the clipboard I still now use.
Oh, really?
For my rallying. Yes, a metal clipboard. And I was doing it was just a 12-car rally in a Mini, which we ended up on the car side. Thank you, Christopher Menon. And we got out of the we clambered out the car out the top, so to speak, to get out of the door that was not up against the ground. Got out of the car and we're looking. We're just about to drive off again. Hey, Chris, where's my clipboard? We looked all around, and it was in the. These are old Minis.
Yeah, yeah.
It was in the driver's side door pocket, a big wide pocket you used to have in the Minis.
Yeah.
It was in the pocket there, so we realised, well, while we were rolling over, it must have whistled past his nose. And of course, this was pre-helmet days as well. We weren't wearing helmets in those days. This is a long time ago, I'll admit. So from then on, no more metal clipboards for rallying.
I would have thought that clipboard that you made in metalwork when you were at school back in would have been big enough to get the Land Ranger maps on. I made one out of a thin piece of what we called in those days hardboard and rounded the edges and used the bulldog clips, and then obviously you layered your maps. So if you had to, sometimes you had two different copies of the same map so that you didn't have to turn a map over. We did that. Last one on this, Mr. Deja Vu, talking about LMP1. He said calling the Toyota an LMH instead of LMP1 is like sticking an orange label on a banana and calling it an orange when in reality it's still clearly a banana. That is brilliant. I'm stealing that as well. And hello to Declan Brennan as well. We should have had Mark King in level 42. Sun goes down on repeat for the last half an hour whilst this is happening. Declan tuned in from Boston. And thanks for all the information you've been passing to us as well about your teams this weekend, Dex, along with all of the PR reps who all are working off-site. Shea Adam has some news about the number 7 car. Odd thing that happened when that spun. It sounds like it threw one of the important belts.
Yes, the serpentine belt got thrown loose when it had its spin in the International Horseshoe earlier on with Ryan Norman behind the wheel. Ryan is back out on track. The car is circulating again, but it was about 25 laps, no, more than that, to try and get it repaired. So that car is quite far down the field. We've also had a little bit of confusion on the pit lane and trying to figure out which cars should be in line behind which. The 57 Windward Racing Mercedes needs to be behind the 111 GRT car, but that car is currently back in 11th, whereas Windward is running in 5th, and it looks like Russell Ward has just been given that news. The 21 Ferrari is supposed to be behind the 57 Windward car, while the 21 Ferrari is currently running in 7th, and we have now been told the order is to be 111, 57, 21. Now the question is, where does that 111 go in the order? Because right now he's in 10th. Does he get to move up to be in 5th to be ahead of Russell Ward, or does Russell have to drop down to 11th? Looks like Russell's dropping down.
The serpentine belt, the big drive belt on the front of the engine, so called, I've heard that called before, because it snakes around through the various pulleys. Depending on what car it is, it can be a very circuitous route for that sort water pump. But on a street car, it would probably drive the alternator as well. But the big long tension drive belt on the front of the engine. Thank you, Shea, for that. Well, over half an hour now behind the safety car.
Yeah, and that's the reason for the holder. That's why we haven't gone back to green. Therefore, is this making sure that everybody's in the right order. They don't want to get to the end of the race and find out that somebody was somehow, disadvantaged. to put it kindly.
Yes, indeed. So, J.R. Hildebrand in the 42 Audi now, and he's out on the circuit. It looks like we're not too far away from going back to green. In fact, the Lexus safety car lights are out, and I'm actually surprised that one or two people, I suppose if you'd dropped after the reset, you would have had to stay at the back. I think if I'd been at the back of the GTD queue, Jeremy, I might have popped back in for another splash of fuel last time around.
Yeah, no, there's a few cars that did. A couple of LMP2 cars, certainly. Number 20 car and number 18 have both done exactly that. High-class racing in Era Motorsport, John. I suppose some of the prototypes actually haven't either as well. Very quick note as we go back to green on the number 42 car. That car did not take part in practice yesterday. There was an off for Alan Metney. Oh, let's go back to that. You describe the restart, John.
Thank you, Jeremy. Back to green and back to racing, and it immediately how these guys can just switch back on. It's not as if they're standing around the water cooler having a chat with their mates before they hit the desk. It's straight down to business. Nasser, Simon Passion on the Ally Cadillac racing car, and then Renger van der Zande was straight at it there, down through the transition onto the infield section, and with still just on half an hour, in fact, before official sunset. There's a little bit of cloud over towards the ocean, and the light is fading very quickly indeed at the Daytona International Speedway. But it's a copy boot restart once again by the 31 Cadillac. Sorry, I was just waiting to see what was going on with the GT cars as they were going around. Through to the bus stop on the restart, and the DPIs immediately have pulled away from the LMP2. Chetilar Racing, by the way, leading that 47 car. Then Ben Keating, who's done a fair bit of work, Jeremy, early on in this race behind the wheel of that number 52 car.
Yes, indeed. He's been in from the get-go, hasn't he? And of course, Ben Keating is driving two cars in this race. He's getting really, really greedy. He's also going to be driving one of the GTD cars, of course, the Aston Martin 4 TF Sport car number 97, which is currently running, I don't know, fairly well up, certainly. So he's trying to get as much drive time as he can. Shay talked about earlier on the minimum drive time that everybody has to achieve during this race, irrespective of whichever class they're in. So that's something that you want to get out of the way in the early stages, and particularly in the Pro-Am classes, you want to get the non-professionals to get their time early on. So Ben Keating is going to focus on this car for a while, then he's going to focus on the TF Sport Aston Martin, and he hopes to have all his driving done as soon as he possibly can, basically. But another footnote, by the way, on that 42 car, the Audi, that's a TFE Sport entry, NTE Sports, excuse me, there was a problem with hitting Alan Metney went off at the pit exit during practice, and there was quite a lot of damage on that car. They actually had to fly in some pieces of bodywork from Detroit that arrived fairly late yesterday evening to get that car whole again, ready to go for the race. They've struggled for speed through practice and qualifying, but done a good job in the early stages. I think it was Don Yant who started that car, and the number 42 car indeed is running at on the lead lap in 15th position in GTD.
Just serving a penalty. The number 1 car, Madison Snow, has just been in and out as a drive-through for passing cars in the slow lane. Ooh, rules rule. Porsche keys the race, Madison. And also keep an eye on the number 64 car as well. That car has a loose right side door mirror. And two things about that. One, you really need all your mirrors and everything to see everything around you. But secondly, of course, it could be a danger if it fell off. So Team GM and their Porsche 911 GT3R, welcome to them in the big show, raising money for a great cause, the jktgfoundation.org. So that Porsche right side mirror loose at the moment. And Shea Adam has more news on cars with issues as we've got side by side. I'll come in a second, Shea, down towards the bus stop. We've got a change for the lead, and Renger van der Zande leads for Cadillac Chip Ganassi. Easy as you like, dragged up on Felipe Nasser. Does seem to be that 31 car isn't quite as fleet of foot in the early part of the stint, even as the other Cadillacs, although it is a Cadillac top 4 at the moment. 0, 1, 31, 48 and 5, your top 4 separated by just on 2 seconds. Shea Adam, I know what you're going to say this because I've seen the message on the race control channel, but I'm going to let you say this because it'll have far more comedy value coming from you.
I've never seen this message before. Car 20, which is the high-class racing car, by the way, spraying with hot smell. Yeah, that's not good. There's white smoke coming out of the back of that car right now. I would imagine that the Orica, currently being driven by Dennis Anderson, will be making a trip down the pit lane now.
That spraying with hot smell is, it sounds like one of those things that they used to write on the back of the legends, on the back of the wheel carriers on some Japanese imports back in the late 80s and early 90s, where it was English sort of, but certainly wasn't English idiom, and some of the descriptions sometimes on parts that you got about what effect they were meant to have on your car were a bit like spraying with hot smell. Okay, that car has come into the pit lane. Dennis Anderson for high class in that red and white. There's a story on that paintwork on that car, I think, Jeremy, isn't there? Or am I thinking of the wrong car? I'm thinking of the wrong car. Don't worry.
I'm not sure.
No, it's all right. We've almost done another hour though, 5 minutes away, just under, as we are 23 minutes away from official sunset, but it is definitely twilight now. It's the gloaming, as our old colleague, former colleague Chuck Dressing would say. Beautiful. Fourth different leader, by the way, when Renger van der Zande went round the outside of Felipe Nasr, going into the bus stop a couple of minutes ago. And he's pulled out a full second already. Simon Pagenaud is another second or so back in third position. 0-1, 31, 48. Loic Duval right on the tailpipes of Pagenaud. So the Allied Cadillac and the Mustang Santley, the JDC Miller car, right together as they're working their way through traffic as well. It's Corvette from Risi from Corvette again. So that is Corvette from Ferrari from Corvette, and John Edwards behind the wheel of the Team RLL BMW. Turn 7, an incident out on the track. That's heading into the bus stop, and the 29 has stopped. Now, what's happened there? Is that just dead stick for that car? It's oh no, it's gone off. The jumbo car is off the circuit. So that's at the bus stop, right in the middle of the bus stop. Damage to the left front bodywork of that car, and a full course caution. Incident team there very quickly indeed. Frustration for the Team Netherlands car. Now, the question. Sorry, Jeremy, go ahead.
I was going to say, if there's any good, well, there's no good news with that, of course, but it's the team principal, team owner, who's gone off, unfortunately.
It is Fritz van Aert, yeah.
That's a shame. He was doing a really nice job too. He was running in a third position at the restart. Lost a couple of positions at that restart, but he was dicing with John Ferrano in a Tower Motorsport car. They were scrapping over 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth position when he went off down there. Yeah, unfortunate.
The angle that he's gone off, Jeremy, and the safety crews are there. The AMR IMSA safety team in the Porsche Cayenne were there very quickly. The angle that he's gone off there, I just wonder if there's been a bit of side-by-side contact with somebody, because it looks like he might have had a bit of hip and shoulder and helped off there. The other thing that can happen in the bus stop, in fairness, is that if you catch a little bit of curb in the wrong place, you get that horrible tank slapper where the car goes one way then the other. What I will say is the build tyres have really done their job very well indeed in dissipating the impact. So this is now, after a really nice long 58-minute green flag session between the first and second yellow flags. Then we had 35 minutes nearly of yellow, and now we just had 7.5 minutes, and that will take us to another full hour of racing completed. Well, it hasn't really, because we've lost about half of that in the yellow flag, but you know what I mean. Before the pits get opened and see if there are any takers, they've been cruising around for a very long time, but of course not using that much fuel. 0-1 took the lead before that. Cadillac Chip Ganassi then lead the motor race from 31. The bright red and white Cadillac, Felipe Nasser. Then Simon Pagenaud in the 48 Cadillac that he took over from Jimmy Johnson. Fourth place Cadillac is Loic Duval, the number 5, the dark grey and yellow Mustang sampling sponsored car. Then the first of the Acuras, that's the blue and black Felipe Albuquerque, number 10. The purple and black Mershank Racing Acura has Dane Cameron behind the wheel in 6th, and Ollie Jarvis for the white Mazda number 55 in 7th. Ollie been in since the start as well, of course. So I reckon now then it is the 47 Cetilar Racing Dallara that leads LMP2 from Eric Lux for Dragon Speed. The 82 car in 2nd, that's an Orica, as is the PR1 Matheson Motorsport Ben Keating car in 3rd, that's the 52. And then it's Win Autosport, the number 11, Tower Motorsport, the 8, and the top 6 made up by Era Motorsport, Paul-Luc Chatin in the 18. In GT Le Mans, Corvette, Ferrari Corvette, 462.3, and BMW number 24, with Philippe Eng now behind the wheel of the 25 in 5th position, but a couple of laps off the top 4 after their issues. In LMP3, it is Rasmus Lindh behind the wheel of Performance Tech number 38. Ligier ahead of Gar Robinson in the similar Ligier for Riley, that's number 74. And Wayne Boyd for Sean Creech Motorsport in the red, white and blue 33. It's in top 3. Ian James has the lead of GTD for the Heart of Racing team and the Aston Martin V8 Vantage, the 4-litre V8. Wonderful sounding thing. Aaron Tielitz for Vassar Sullivan for Lexus in the 14 car second, and Jan Halen has taken over the Wright Motorsport Porsche. He runs 3rd. Misha Goikberg in 4th for GRT Grasser in their 19 Lamborghini Huracan. Turner Motorsports, Robbie Foley's behind the wheel of the 96 car. He is in 5th position in that BMW, and rounding off the top 6, Lawrence Vantour for Pfaff Motorsport in their Porsche with the plaid colouring on it, the 911 GT3R number 9. That's your top 6, and this will be a short yellow, and we'll tell you all about that as the next hour of racing starts right now. VP Racing Fuel Pit and Paddock update. Shea Adam with news on a number of issues. Shea?
Just checked in with Dylan Murray because the number 91 Riley Technology LMP3 car, I knew I was almost going to say a different manufacturer there, but no, they're not in that class anymore. Jim Cox started the race, and he was the driver. I just checked in with Dylan Murray, who's been his longtime driving partner for quite some time now. They don't know completely what the issue is for their LMP3 machine. It is back in the garage. It all started under yellow when the drink tube had a malfunction and started spraying water all across the inside of the car. Then the car started losing power. They brought the car into the pit lane to look at what the issue was, and it wouldn't fire back up. So now they're back behind the wall going to work on the car with more hands. That's why they would go back behind the wall to the garage area. They're optimistic that they can figure out what's going on, even though they have no idea what the problem is. And the good news is they're not losing as many laps with it being under yellow. So that is a benefit, but that does mean we only have 4 LMP3 cars out running on track right now on the same lap.
Yeah, thanks, Shay, for that. And just a quick note on LMP2. As John Heinhoff said, Antonio Fuoco was leading in the Cetilar Racing Dallara. He took over on that first round of pit stops from Roberto Lacorte, and the 24-year-old Italian was pulling away at the front pretty rapidly in much the same fashion as was Ben Keating in the early part of the race. But of course that big lead has now been negated by this full course caution period. But it's still Antonio Fuoco that leads then against from a phalanx of Oreca's. Of course, two cars having problems in LMP2 during this caution period or right after it. Number 20 car we saw come into the pits. Don't think that has yet resumed. It has resumed actually, but it is now a couple of laps behind the other LMP2 cars, actually 3 laps behind the other LMP2 cars. And then the problem, of course, for Fritz van Eert in the Dutch car as well. So some changes there in the LMP2 class. We've now got 7 cars on the lead lap in LMP2, with Austin Dillon being the last of those in car number 51.
Well, after some exciting racing, we've been rather stymied with the Lexus safety car, beautiful though it is, having turned rather too many laps. However, safety comes first. And when we said, by the way, it's a short yellow, we should explain. Remember what I said before when I was addressing the frustrations that I'm seeing on Twitter about long yellows for what seemed to be not that serious an issue? Well, to stop us having to go through all of that process again, and because it's within 15 minutes of the previous yellow, or indeed at the discretion of the race director, they can call what's called a short yellow. Basically that means the field is frozen behind the safety car. The pits will not open while the safety car is out, which means we don't have to keep resetting the field, and therefore we can get back to green flag racing much quicker. And indeed we will be going back to green flag racing as we come round to complete this lap. Well into the twilight now. Sunset about 13 minutes away. That will take us into over 13 hours of official night time here at Daytona International Raceway. Coming up to 10 minutes before 6 o'clock Eastern, wherever you are around the world. That's coming up to 10 to 11 in the UK. Let's go back racing and see what we can make of this. It looks like at the front of the field, the red and white number 31, he's got a good run. Felipe Nasser hunting down Renger van der Zande into turn 1, takes a wider line, then chops it back to the inside. The Ally Cadillac in third position. Got not one but 2 cars fighting, the 10 and the 5 right there, right down the outside. That's a brilliant move by Loic Duval. Get side by side with the Ally Cadillac as they come out of the International Horseshoe and head towards the kink. Super quick corner. Sun going down at the west end of the circuit. They're facing right into it now as they turn into turn 5 and through there. Lovely piece of driving from all concerned there. And Duval's up into third position ahead of Simon Pagenaud, who now is fighting a rearguard action against the black and blue Konica Minolta Acura of Philippe Albuquerque. Still the top 4 are Cadillacs, but Philippe trying to make a little bit of a dent in their domination in the top 4 positions. Into the bus stop. Michelin tyres will be coming back up to temperature and pressure now after losing a little bit behind the safety car. Not too long a safety car there, but it was still over 10 minutes, so it will take a wee while before the field comes back to these cars. Dane Cameron for Meerschaank Racing in the purple and black Acura, just bouncing through the tri-oval. By no means absolutely flat through there. The cars do move around. It's magnificent, magnificent. And once again, they'll start to catch up the back of the field. And the first car I think that they're going to have to put a lap on is the number 12 Lexus. Now there's been a little bit of an incident at the opening laps. Looks like the right Porsche had a problem coming through the bus stop on the restart. Just didn't seem to pick up at all. Outbrake themselves. Having a look at the Lexus that was in front of them was Jeremy Shaw, I think in third position there. Went all the way down the left-hand side, the inside into the bus stop, but it's a little bit dirtier there, so a little difficult to get the pass made, and that's cost them a little bit of real estate. Also saw a Ferrari and a Porsche battling away together in the middle of that pack as well. Van der Zande not able to get away at the front of the field. Chip Ganassi's Cadillac then 0.2 of a second. And the top three absolutely together. And here comes Loic Duval. He's got a decent run. Pick up a tour from 3, 4, 5 car lengths back, you know, here. And he's got a decent slipstream now. He's in the draft, in the tri-oval. The red and white Cadillac stays on the double yellow line at the bottom of the racetrack. Can the dark grey car go round the outside and take second position? The answer would seem for the moment no. Chops to the inside through turns 1 and through 2 and through that little chicane into the heavy braking area at the International Horseshoe. Top 6, Jeremy Shaw, absolutely together.
Yeah, they are, aren't they, John? Interesting. 1:37.1 that last time for Renger van der Zande in the lead of this race. Yeah, I would expect it to get up a little bit, up to speed a little bit quicker than that. But yeah, the sun has gone down now. The track temperature will have dropped. It will take just a little bit more time to build a heat into these Michelin tyres. On the last restart, the first flying lap was a 1:35.5, 1:35.6. This one was 37.1. But no dramas. It's just interesting how those things pan out during a race, I think. But by the way, just another quick note about the LMP3 cars and that problems for the Riley entry. There have been difficulties with the electronics on these cars. The second generation LMP3 cars have been running in Europe for a year. They're new over here, and one would have hoped that all those sort of gremlins had been ironed out before they came to this country, but apparently not. Because we saw quite a few problems last weekend. I think 5 different cars had difficulties during the opening round of the new IMSA Prototype Challenge Series, which was held last weekend at the Roar. Yeah, it's a shame to see them raising their heads at this early stage in this race. And I talked about that last lap by Renger van der Zande. He now goes to set the fastest lap of the race on lap 65. In 1:34.657. So again, just like that restart, just taking it cautious for a lap or two, and now he's into the groove.
It says to me, Jeremy, that the tyres were taking a little longer to come up than even we thought after a relatively short full course yellow. Michelin telling us the track temperature is still hovering around about 19 Celsius. That will go down overnight. No points for fastest lap in this race, but a lot of pride that goes along with that. We did have points paying in the 2 Idemitsu MX5 races over the weekend. You can listen to the archive of that at imsaradio.com, and the races will be made available on the official IMSA YouTube channel once we've aired the highlights on NBCSN. Jeremy Shaw.
Yeah, here's a good one. So that fastest lap was a 1:34.657 by Renger van der Zande. The fastest lap in last year's race was a 1:34.652 by Renger van der Zande. So
I see what he's done. He's pressed the 1:34.65 button on the steering wheel, hasn't he? He's got an app for that, quite clearly. Yeah. It's extraordinary.
Different team this year. Same, still a Cadillac, of course, but different team now, isn't it? Of course, he's driven for the Konica Minolta team the last couple of years. Now driving for Cadillac Chip Ganassi Racing. But clearly, as you say, he's got that chip set in his mind, and he's able to turn those very, very quick lap times.
Should mention it. It's not the same chassis that he's driving. Tyres for Michelin haven't changed since last year. I don't think, Shea, that we're running the same compounds and construction as we did last year, with a question mark.
Yes, but that's actually a good point, John, because last year at Daytona, I believe we ran on the S8 Michelin in GTD.
Yeah.
Now for the entirety of the 2021 season, the Michelin tire available to all the GTD competitors will be the S9, which is a slightly harder version of the compound.
Yeah, good point. And the tyres, Porsche keys to the race. So 15 minutes away. Sorry, another 15 minutes completed is what I was trying to say of this race. But, we're getting back up to speed again. I'm very interested to note the Cadillacs, all 4 Cadillacs at the front of the field, Jeremy, but whether it's setup differences, and clearly Renger van der Zande has set and influenced the setup of that 0-1 car, much as he had last year when he was racing for Wayne Taylor, as he's produced a very similar lap time, as you rightly noted. There does seem to be slight differences between those 4 Cadillacs as where they find their optimum pace within the fuel and tyre run.
Yeah, there does, doesn't there? But not nearly as much as we saw yesterday in the Michelin Pilot Challenge race between the various BMWs.
Yeah, that's true.
That was really amazing. Astonishing to see the differences there. The Cadillacs, the teams will set them up slightly differently, they might want to be a little bit quicker on the straights. Or carry a little bit more downforce to be quicker through the corners. It's always a trade-off on every racetrack. Here, yes, it's a very fast racetrack, so you want to trim the car out as best you can, but you also want to make sure there is plenty of downforce as well, relatively speaking, for these infield corners. So you don't want to have trim right out, and then you won't be able to get the car through the infield. Just a quick note in GTD, a pit stop this time around for Misha Goikberg in number 19 car. That was one of the cars, I think, that did not pit.
Just a note, Jeremy, sorry on that, but I've just noticed that the BMW of John Edwards has got ahead of Tonio Garcia in GT Le Mans. And he's right up the tailpipes of James Collado, so that's been a very good start from John Edwards in the black. That's the number 24 BMW. Philippe Eng's in with them, but he's a couple... no, he's not. He's back on the lead. Can't be, surely. Yes, he is. He's back on the lead lap in GT Le Mans. So they did very good work when they swapped that nose over. Used the yellow flags very well indeed. So those top 5 in GT Le Mans are now tied up together, and there is a battle for second position. Sorry, Jeremy. I'll keep an eye on that. You make the point that you were about to make. Sorry, go ahead.
Just that Misha Goikberg brought the number 19 Grassen Racing Lamborghini into the pits. He's handed over to the German Tim Zimmermann, who had this time I think he's got out through the pit lane exit okay. He was one of the guys that collected that very sharp and tricky left-hand turn coming off the pit lane before you go through the Michelin RF tyre readers. It's caught a lot of people out over the years, so he shouldn't feel too bad. So that car was in the pits. Also into the pits was the previously class leading Aston Martin for Heart of Racing team, with Ian James having handed over the number 23 car now to Darren Turner, who therefore resumed at the back of the pack in GTD.
Delighted to say that joining us in the Haggerty Global Broadcast Centre, getting ready for his first full shift of the 59th running of the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona, is Johnny Palmer. JP, I know you've been keeping an eye on what's been going on. Ready to rock and roll, mate. This one looks like it's heating up nicely.
It doesn't it just? Yeah, I know, I fully agree. And a long way to go yet. Can I be the first person to say that? But the early signs are very good. What are we? 2 hours 20 minutes old. But I love this time of evening where the light is just starting to blend away, and the stage is set for a cracking night, I think.
You'll have Joe Bradley with you and Jeremy as well here. There is something I wanted to ask you this a bit earlier on, actually. There is something magical about this place. This is your first time in the Hagerty Global Broadcast Centre this year. While we've been competitive on track, but I know you've been watching the Raw and such like. But there is something magical about racing cars going around here, even in the current circumstances.
There is, and motorsport is magical, I think, however you experience it. I'm sure there are plenty of people around the world who had planned to travel to this year's race many months ago, realised they needed to do a little bit of a rejig. But I hope that however you're experiencing this race, whether it be visuals and radio, just pure radio, whether you're one of the lucky ones who actually be at the track and have us for company, it's not detracting in any sense, because you know the glare of and the mass of headlights of cars streaming their way out of Speedway Turn 4 and into the tri-oval just doesn't lose anything for me. And you know, I'm still one of the young ones in terms of how long I've been covering this race. I think the first one I did was 2015, but the magic is still there, as I'm sure it is for Jeremy, who's done a handful more than that.
Yeah, but the magic never wears off, Johnny, I can tell you that.
No, it's really exciting to see 49 cars then for the 59th edition of the 24 Hours of Daytona, and very busy indeed, as some degree of untangling has to happen after, well, a succession of cautions, sadly. But let's hope that we can get a nice bit of mileage in now under green flag conditions and try to work out who's in the best position at this phase of the race. Brilliant battling from the four leading Cadillacs as we came out of the previous caution, particularly on the infield, and a stonking move from Loic Duval to snatch third position from Simon Pagenaud as they came out of the International Horseshoe. So Renger van der Zande leads in the 0-1 car, 70 laps now done, and there's a lead of nearly 3 seconds from Felipe Nasser in the Whelen Engineering Cadillac DPI. Loic Duval, Simon Pagenaud still only about a second apart, third and fourth, and then Philippe Albuquerque, well, a storming run for him. He's trying to unsettle Pagenaud in that fourth place, and indeed is past him now. So as they go through the tri-oval, the number 10 car up a further place to fourth, and Pagenaud in the Ally Cadillac racing car won't be too panicked by this because it's all about staying in the hunt in these early stages and not really wanting to defend overly, because all that does is lose you time. You might as well allow a car to overtake. If you feel they are faster in this phase of the race, it's not going to create too much of a dent for the next stint or so. Dane Cameron is in 6th place and Ollie Jarvis 7th in the 55 car, with Mazda Motorsports very happy indeed with their preparation. But 2 cars are off on the back straight heading into the bus stop, one of which is a Ferrari, Risi Ferrari possibly, and the 38 prototype off the road as well. Now that was a move that was coming a long way back. It was the 62 James Collado driven Risi Competizione Ferrari. He was hunting down the 38 car, which is Cameron Castles in the Performance Tech Motorsport Ligier in LMP3. Jeremy, how did you read that one?
Daft move by the Ferrari, quite frankly. He stuffed it down inside there, and yeah, I guess he was pretty much alongside at the turning point, to be fair. But you know, that's one of the problems. The LMP3 cars, they're not particularly quick on the straights. But look, it was a bit of a lunge, wasn't it? Quite frankly, the GT cars are quite a bit quicker than the LMP3s on the straightaways. When they get to the corners, however, the prototypes, they do have a fair bit of downforce, and they are pretty quick. For me, that was an unnecessary move there by the Ferrari driver, and I would pin the blame on him if I was doing it. It certainly wasn't anything deliberate, because you don't want to be causing any drama for yourself, let alone anybody else. But I think there was a slight error of judgment there, which could end up being costly.
Well, Cameron Castles had just got into the number 38 Performance Tech Motorsports car, but I agree with you. He was doing nothing wrong there. And a move that came out of nowhere from James Collado. Yeah, indeed.
And now had been leading the class.
Now has to go behind the wall from the lead of the class, missing or at least trailing one of its what they call bullets from the rear of the car. That's the cheese wedge shaped piece of bodywork that sits right behind each of the rear wheels, and it was dragging the rear right one as it went behind the wall, so that will need to be fixed up as well. In ACO rules racing, those two panels, those boxes, have to be intact on the car for it to be legal, and well, it would mean at the very least a meatball flag, because there is danger that will come off the car and whack a windshield immediately behind it. So obvious damage that needs to be repaired on the 38 car, and horrendous luck for Cameron Castles, trying to mind his own business really, and continue in the lead of the class, as Jeremy says. So that will be looked at by race control, and any news we get, we'll bring that to you. Jeremy Shaw and Johnny Palmer here on IMSA Radio. You can get in touch, remember, at IMSA Radio. Use the hashtag R24Radio, R24Radio. And you're tuned to both Jeremy and I in the Haggerty Global Broadcast Centre. Shay stepping away for a little period of time, but we can welcome, for the first time to the broadcast this week, Joe Bradley, who is looking after things all related to the VP Racing Fuels pit and paddock reports. Evening, Joe.
That hour of the day where the sun's going down and the lighting and the colours, and we'll see the colours on the cars start to gleam soon under the full spotlight soon.
Absolutely, and yeah, the atmosphere of this place not being detracted from at all by the cautions, although they are a little bit annoying, I have to say, because again I thought we were in for at least a period of maybe half an hour of green flag running, but back into a caution. Now, there was the short one last time around. This time, Jeremy, pits are open and we're going to do the full rotation, if you like. We've got to a point where fuel is necessary. They won't be down to anything like empty tanks, but an opportunity nevertheless to do a stop and tweak the strategy once more.
Yes, and we've got looks like just two pit callers. A bit surprising for me. As you say, most of the time they've been under, since they made the last pit stops, have been under caution. They've done 4, 6, about 10 laps, though, of green, almost 10 laps of green, so it's almost half a stint. I'm surprised there aren't more pit takers, to be honest, but that's the way it is. So just a number 31 car that was running in second position, and a number 48, that's Simon Pagenaud, who's taken over from Jimmy Johnson, who started this race. I think actually those are the only two driver changes in the DPIs through this opening 2 hours and 27 minutes of this race. So I wouldn't be surprised now to see driver changes in the driver change in number 31 car at this stage.
It's being suggested actually that those two may have been emergency service. Well, the nozzle wasn't on for too long for either car, so maybe they were running particularly short of fuel. Coming down pit road, is it 5 seconds, Jeremy, that you permitted during? Yeah,
it is,
caution?
But they certainly shouldn't. It is 5 seconds. They certainly shouldn't have been that close. So that's curious. That's definitely strange. Yeah, I mean, they certainly haven't done enough to need a full service at that stage. But you're right, they came in a lap too soon, didn't they?
It seems so, yes. And then we're in the queue to rejoin just as everybody else is pouring past on the racetrack. But remember, the end of the pit lane and the racetrack, there's not a lot between those two things. So for that reason, pit lane exit is closed to allow the train behind the safety car to safely scoot by through turns 1 and 2. So if you're just joining RS2 IMSA Radio for our coverage of the 59th edition of the Rolex 24 at Daytona, we started off with just under 9 minutes of green flag racing. There was then a first caution, which lasted just over 8 minutes. A sustained run after that of nearly an hour of green flag competition, which was very welcome. But then over half an hour for the second caution, which was frustrating for a few. And then they only got going again for another 7.5 minutes before going back into a 10-minute caution. That was the short one. And then we managed nearly 16 minutes of green before this fourth caution of the race so far. And 21.5 hours still to go, with the safety car now rounding turns 3 and 4 on the main speedway and coming back through towards the tri-oval. So we talk about speedways 3 and 4, turns 3 and 4. That's actually how they're labelled on the track map, but we'll also be talking about turns 1 and 2, which 1 is the kink off the tri-oval, 2 being the left-hander. 2A is that little awkward right and left twist in the track before you then go into the braking area at 3, but 2A is often labelled as Daytona's hidden corner. 4 is the left-hand kink on the infield, and then into 5 the western horseshoe. 6 brings you back onto speedway turn 1, and 1, 2, 3 and 4 are labelled as such according to the banked oval. The pit callers that Jeremy mentioned, by the way, the 31 Felipe Nasser car and the Simon Pagenaud driven 48 Ally Cadillac racing machine, but everybody else has now come in, and this is on the lap that we had expected pit stops to happen. So from the race lead, Renger van der Zande in, and following him, Loic Duval in the 5 Mustang sampling Cadillac, also in Dane Cameron and Philippe Albuquerque in their Acuras for Meyer Shank and Konica Minolta respectively, the Mazda of Ollie Jarvis down pit road 2, and a whole load of LMP2s as well, the top 7 in fact from that division. It is busy right now, Joe Bradley, for this VP Racing Fuels pit and paddock report down in the pits.
It's at this stage of the race, Johnny, that this race always strikes me as a high-speed game of chess. What we're seeing now is straight in the pit stop, the 31 car. It's up on the 4 tyres this time, and another car there just blocking out my view to see. We had a crew member there just looking under the car, then looking for bits of rubber and detritus that can block radiator ducts and all sorts, and start messing with the underfloor and create a poor downforce on the cars. And that's pretty much what we're seeing now under this yellow caution period.
Busy on the way in, busy on the way out as well, and there's no doubt some place changes taking place. Remember, you don't have to stay in the same order. If your stop's quicker, then you dart past the cars that you're battling with, and it's a race not only on the race track, although not at the moment under caution, but more so on pit road. And you have to be so careful when you rejoin as well that you're not, first of all, being unsafely released, and that you're in the right order single file as you cross that solid white line at the end of pit road. A number of times in the past we've seen cars actually continuing to be 2 abreast the wrong side of the white line, and they really do need to get that sorted out, because it is a very narrow pit exit here after you have left pit road itself and taken to the out lane. So sun still more than peaking above the horizon, generating this brilliant atmosphere this early on in the evening, and cars heading out onto the racetrack once again into the international horseshoe. They're gaggling together on the back straight as well, and Kevin Magnussen, by the way, has taken over the 01 Cadillac Chip Ganassi Racing DPI. So that was the car that was being driven by Renger van der Zande, handing over to the Dane Kevin Magnussen. Tristan Vautier, new driver, into the 5, replacing Loic Duval. And in the 60 car, it's now Olivier Pla. That was Dane Cameron, but Pla, the Frenchman, takes charge now. So at a point in the race where it sort of fits in with the strategy to change pilots as well, it would seem. So Ricky Taylor into the number 10 to replace Philippe Albuquerque, and Harry Tinknell, rather Jarvis, Ollie Jarvis, handing over to Harry Tinknell for the Mazda crew, number 55. Now the turn, Joe Bradley, of all of these GTs is getting busy again for the VP Racing Fuels pit paddock report. Vassar Sullivan, number 14 Lexus, getting some service. By the way, into pit road, Tommy Milner led the party for GTLM in his Corvette C8R, closely followed by John Edwards' BMW M8. Antonio Garcia also for Corvette third, with Philippe Eng in fourth position in the 25. But there's already some shuffling of the order. Notice Garcia getting ahead of the BMW of John Edwards. That might just be a quirk of where the timing line is within the pit lane. Laurence Vantor best placed in GTD. He brought everybody else in. Vantor, the Belgian, leading for Pfaff Motorsports in a Porsche. Rolf Eichen in the Lamborghini for GRT Grasser. And Daniel Morad for Mercedes for Allegra Motorsports. So 9, treble 1 and 28 the order as they came in. And it is literally nose to tail now for those cars snaking their way out of pit road. And they're all being reasonably well behaved. That might have something to do with the fact that it is still very early on in the race and everybody wants to try to not attract the attention of the clerk of the course and other stewards in race control. So picturesque sky, the Lake Lloyd, very, very calm indeed. The Ferris wheel in full illuminated action as well. Sadly, nobody will be riding that this weekend, but at least it's there in all its splendour. And we can go to Joe Bradley for this VP Racing Fuels Pit and Paddock report. We will get there very shortly, and actually we won't hear from Joe, beg your pardon, but we can hear from Jules Gounon, who now joins us on RS2 at IMSA Radio. Jules, how are you? How's the race for you so far?
Yeah, hello. I'm in the RV right now with Ale Piagudi that just has done his sprint. We were watching on TV when we saw James had a contact with the LMP3. Apparently on the radio, James said the car was vibrating, but looks like it was only the tire that was flat spotted. So, yeah, hopefully we have been lucky 2 times already in the race. That start was a bit crazy, and now we had this contact on traffic. So let's hope that the luck stays with us for until tomorrow afternoon.
We were watching that incident, obviously, with great interest, because this is, I suppose, the quirk of this particular race. We've got LMP3s at Daytona for the first time, and qualifying showed us that the times from your cars, the GTLMs, and the times from LMP3 are very close indeed. There are going to be moments around this lap where your car has a slight advantage. Is it just one of those moments where your car was marginally faster and the LMP3 driver didn't quite realise it?
I don't know. It's very difficult always to comment on incidents that happen on the track when you're not in the car. I think James will maybe explain later. I think it was misunderstood between the LMP3 and James. But since the Raw, we have seen that the new category that has been introduced in IMSA, which is LMP3, it's a tricky one for us because they are doing the same lap time as us. But on the straight, they are hitting the limiter of 290. And our top end is a bit quicker, so it makes the traffic very difficult, and that's the race. That's what we love racing, especially in the US with multi-class, and we're going to try to take an extra care until the end of the race and to try to bring a good result for Rizzi.
A lot of drivers have said to me in the past that in order to do well in this race, in order to win it, you actually need a very strong car, because it is possible to come back from moments like that, particularly if they are early on in the race. So if anything, it's happened at a good time with many, many hours to recover. And through the years, these GT-LM cars, Ferrari perhaps specifically, has shown itself to be a strong chassis.
Yeah, especially after the hit at the beginning. I think we have been really lucky on the start with the hit of the Porsche on the side door. You know, those GTLMs have a lot of downforce those days, and when you damage a part of the body aero kit, let's say, you lose a lot of top speed, and then the race will be really difficult for us. But Ale showed that the car was very quick at the beginning of the race, and James also. So that was good, and I think right now we have just lost a little flop flap, sorry, from the splitter on the right after the contact. So hopefully the car will be good. And yeah, we have the radio. I cannot tell you what James say now because we have to be on the phone, but hopefully the car will be strong. And Ferrari is a well-proven car, especially the 488 GTE that has been out there now for many years. So let's hopefully have a good one for the end. You know, this race is all about trying to keep the car as good as possible for the last 4 hours and then really send it. So let's hopefully we can do that.
Jules, Jeremy Shaw here. You've got one of the best strategists there in the business in Rick Mayer, the engineer at Risi Competizione. There's all sorts of, lots of strategy to be played out during this race, and it's going to be good to have somebody like that on the pit stand.
Yeah, for sure. It's cool for us that we don't do strategy because otherwise we'll have big trouble. And we are glad to have such a smart guy as Rick to do the strategy and so many years of experience that, yeah, we fully trust him. And I don't even look at the strategy. I just try to do my best in the car, and I know they will do their best with the strategy, and they always do super mega calls. So it's always very good for us with such a great team behind us, so then you can only focus at maximum 100% on the driving, and you know that the team will do also the best for the car. So that's a great feeling to have such an experimented team behind us.
Jules, we know this is your downtime, relaxing in the RV, so we won't take any more of it from you, but good luck for your next stint and for the rest of the team as well. We wish you a great race.
Thank you very much, and I'm listening to you always in the RV while we don't drive, so you're the best out there, and keep doing it, and yeah, I hope to see you Sunday. Let's see. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. We will say likewise, and thank you very much for your kind words there. The VP Racing Fuels Pit and Paddock report with Jules Gounon right here on RS2 IMSA Radio from the 62 Ferrari, and we're just tracking back through various notes to try and work out whether Jules has ever had an experience of a Ferrari, whether at GTD/GT3 level or in the GTE world, but I don't think he has. He was a Bathurst winner for Bentley in 2020 and also raced in the SRO Championship, but not in a Ferrari to my knowledge. So this is a little bit of a learning curve for him. That Ferrari's going strongly though again. We're back to green, by the way, at the 59th edition of the Rolex 24 of Daytona, and the Ferrari 62 going on the high side. James Collado for Risi Competizione is still at the wheel, and he is hunting down at least one BMW. Yes, it's the Beamer of Jesse Krohn, and that Ferrari pits as I speak about it during the green. So James Collado is in and very quickly slips from 4th to 5th place. Philippe Eng stays on the racetrack into the tri-oval and bags that place back again. So Ferrari down pit lane, and, well, Jeremy, is this a drive-through penalty perhaps for the coming together with a P3? Exactly, I think that it might be.
That's exactly what it is, Johnny Palmer. Yes, it's incident responsibility for that number 62 car. It did look like a bit of a late lunge down the inside there of that 3 car. That is indeed what has happened there. It is an incident responsibility drive-through penalty for the numbers. This drive cost him around about 30 seconds. He joined out. He's done the lead lap, so he's come back down in all. But it just kind of hammers things home a bit. You've got to pay attention. Ooh, it shouldn't have cost him much time. He's now just run off the road also. Just come straight out of the pits and ran straight on onto the grass at the International Horseshoe. So it's not been a great couple of laps for James Collado in number 62. Oh, he got a help. Oh wow. So that was number 70. That was the number 64 car, which had been driven by Ted Giovannis, and clearly Roy tried to go around the outside of Johnny McBride at the right-hander there, and Ted didn't know he was going to go on that side, and there was some contact between the two, so that explained. I thought it was very unusual for Collado to make a mistake like that, and indeed it wasn't his fault. He was assisted off the road there, but hopefully again no major contact, and he'll be able to carry on. It's been a dramatic couple of laps for that number 62 Ferrari.
certainly knows his Daytona started, doesn't he? With plenty of ventures towards the scenery that weren't part of the plan. But best to get these things out of the way, as I was mentioning to Jules Gounon, nice and early in the race, and still have plenty of time to recover. He's 18 seconds adrift of his class lead, which is held by Tommy Milner. Milner's only got a 0.3 of a second lead over sister Corvette for Jordan Taylor, number 3. So 4 and 3 leading, but amazingly, James Calado's only lost net 18 seconds, because of course everything condensed behind the safety car immediately after the incident that involved him and the 38 LMP car, Castles. So it could have been a lot worse. He's still in the ballpark.
It could have been a lot.
Engine you hear in the background being stressed to its very limit, by the way, is the Harry Ticknell Mazda Motorsports DPI. He's having a right old scrap with Simon Pagenaud in the Ally Cadillac Racing caddy. So car 48, 6th position, made that 5th now. He's got ahead of the 55 Mazda. And actually, let's have a look. Yes, with another Cadillac behind, which will be Chase Elliott, I reckon, for Whelan Engineering Racing. So they are 5th, 6th and 7th with the 48 car, if I'm reading that correctly, now ahead of the 55. That's right, because the tail lights on a Dallara are sort of that inverted L shape. Used to be carried by the car up ahead, but that's become an Acura, remember, in the off-season, just like the number 10 car as well. Much more used to that being a Cadillac, but they've reverted, or rather changed, to an Acura DPI in very nice liveries for 2021. So almost at full darkness now, and to get used to this, it'll be many hours before the sun appears again above the horizon. The white headlights indicate that cars are in the prototype classes. Amber or yellow headlights for the GT cars. Still a hint of sunlight in the sky over the huge grandstand which overlooks the World Centre of Racing. 1 or 2 people in there, by the way, as there is a small crowd permitted to this year's event. I'm being told that it's actually Nick Tandy in the number 4 car, so that suggests a timing glitch. Tommy Milner still labelled as the number 4 Corvette driver. That hopefully will be switched very quickly to Nick Tandy. Several sources suggesting it's Milner, so it's obviously a driver ID problem. Maybe the switch hasn't quite been clicked to the correct setting. Joe Bradley with a VP Racing Fuels pit and paddock report. We had an incident earlier on, Joe, for the Racing Team Nederland prototype. What do you know?
Yeah, we saw Freek van Aert putting that car off at the bus stop chicane, front end damage. Didn't look too bad, looked like the right hand corner, so a full front deck would have been replaced on that car, but we then saw that car rejoin. It then came straight back in the pits. It's got Guido van der Garde at the wheel of the car, and we've seen that car being pushed down pit road. It's got an overheating gearbox. Now, it's hard to judge whether cause or effect that gearbox issue has been caused by that off, because we've discussed this so many times. When a car goes in front end, you think that the damage is going to be around the front end of the car, but we just do not know how the energy transfers through that car. And I wouldn't be surprised if something's going to skew somewhere down that chassis towards the engine and gearbox area. So that car's still in the pits, and it's dropped way down now. It's 17 laps off.
That's a real shame, because that came to the event as perhaps one of the favourites of many, actually, in LMP2. But Fritz van Aert at European Le Mans Series, where he used to race at now World Endurance Championship level, has proven himself to be one of the quickest bronze drivers in those particular series, and he's joined by 3 brilliant talents. Joop van Houten, Guido van der Garde, regulars with him in the WEC, and Charles Milesi. They'll still have a good time, and now the target is, of course, to try and get the car to the end of the race. But as you say, 17 laps down now for car 29, not the start that they wanted. Jeremy, car number 64 has also been assessed a drive-through penalty.
Indeed, it has. That is the Team TGM Porsche, been run by Wright Motorsports. Ted Giovannis was at the wheel. That was the car that we saw was involved in the incident with his number 62. The second incident with the 62. The first one, the incident between the 62 and the 38. A blame on that one was apportioned to the number 62 car. That was that drive-through for James Collado. But as we saw when he came out of the pits, he was ushered off the road inadvertently by the number 64 Porsche. So at that time, the boot was on the other foot, so to speak. It's Ted Giovannis that had to serve that drive-through penalty for incident responsibility.
55 Mazda running in now 4th position, so that car's got ahead of Olivier Pla, by the way, on this lap, and despite having been overtaken by a couple of cars not too long ago, Tinkel's actually making some progress now and works his way then up to 4th place. There is a new lap, new fastest lap within the LMP2 category produced by Paul-Luc Chatin. We shouldn't be surprised about that. One of the big names for Era Motorsport in his number 18 Oreca. That's pretty much the all-white car with the blue rear wing end plates. And of course the LMP2's carrying their race numbers with the blue backing on as well, so easy to tell them apart from other cars in the class. And Paul-Luc Chatin building a tidy lead there, nearly over 8 seconds back to Ben Keating for PR1 Matheson Motorsports. Their Oreca, Tim Bourret just starting to turn the screw a little bit on Ben Keating, who is in the 52 car. So Bourret driving the 8, and surely that gap's going to slowly come down because Tim generally quicker than Ben in the practice sessions. Andrea Bellicchi as well won't be hanging around for Cetilar Racing. He's in the 4th place LMP2 car, driving number 47. So Nick Tandy has been labelled now in the number 4 car, so my spies were spot on with that. And Tommy Milner obviously stepped out in the last stop. Jordan Taylor following pretty much Nick's every move. 1.8 seconds is the margin between the top 2 Corvettes. Jesse Crone in the number 24 BMW is in 3rd position, with Philippe Eng in the 2nd of the BMWs. Then are you recovering James Collado? 5th for Reese. The one car that's sadly not in the fight early doors is the 79 WeatherTech Racing Porsche for Cooper McNeil. That's also had its problems, as described by John Hindhoff and Jeremy Shaw earlier on, and has only just ticked off 70 laps completed, so 14 laps down from the race leader. Not quite as bad compared to the GTLM class leader, 12 laps off the pace for car 79. It is just after 8:30 in the evening Eastern Standard Time, and a good chunk now of night running for these particular drivers. Almost the awkward bit has just been done, which is the transition from daylight into evening. And Jeremy, you can add on the points, many of them that I've just brought to the table.
Yeah, I was going to add, Andrea Bellicchi has taken over in the number 47 Cetilar de Lara from Antonio Fuoco, who was marching away during the previous brief green flag periods. So he's now, as you say, running in the 4th position. Paul-Luc Chatin has set that fastest lap of the race. Christopher Mies is running in 5th now in caliber 82 for Dragon Speed. That's the car that hasn't had the problem. And he's just Christopher Mies, who I'm not sure he's ever driven a prototype before this weekend, actually. Better known for his GT3 expertise, particularly, of course, with Audi. A 138.5, that's his best lap of the race last time around. Right behind him on the racetrack, or chasing him on the racetrack, is Tristan Nunez in caliber 11 for Win Autosport. New team this season. Stephen Thomas started the race. He is the team principal there, along with Bobby Golazinski. And Stephen Thomas, 2 years ago, he knew absolutely nothing about racing, never even sat in a race car, didn't know anything about it whatsoever. Got himself did a track day in a car, loved it. Cut a long story short, he got hooked up with Ross Bentley is his driver coach, and a little over a year ago he had his first ever race. He was very impressive last season, having decided to buy an LMP3 car, run that in the IMSA Prototype Challenge Series. So much so, by the end of the season, he was actually leading the race, the final round of the championship. So really, really impressive. Good first stint by Stephen Thomas. Sadly, that car over now to Tristan Nunez, who will be the time co-driver this season.
Let's take this opportunity for another VP Racing Fuels pit and paddock report, because patiently waiting, and we thank him for this, Felipe Nasser, who started from pole position all those hours back at 3:40 this afternoon. So Felipe, I suppose you've first got to tell us how that start was. Apologies, things are moving rather rapidly beneath my feet. We will hopefully catch up with Felipe Nasser very, very shortly. If not, later on in the race. I know he's not very far away from another appointment, because of course these race drivers not only having to be busy in the cockpit, but when they're not in the cars, they also have to be doing various other duties. Some of them, of course, in the virtual world these days, because fans and sponsors still want to hear from drivers. So even though there's a small amount of crowd around at the venue itself, a lot of the post-stint interviews will be being done from a virtual standpoint. So we'll get Joe back in just a second. But the Vassar Sullivan Lexus, one of a couple of very smart-looking cars in their typical highlighter yellow and black liveries. The 12 and the 14 Lexus cars just heading through, one of them heading through the bus stop chicane. Kyle Kirkwood leads the class, by the way, and that car is enjoying a 2.5 second lead over Darren Turner. We will, by the way, be hearing from Felipe Nasser just as soon as he is away from his latest duties, so thank you to him. As Kirkwood comes off the trioval and darts down into the first couple of corners, leading from Darren Turner's Heart of Racing Aston Martin. Trent Hidman for Wright Motorsports in the teal livery Porsche. Well, you can't tell that at this level of light. Car 16 running in third, ahead of Indy Joncher and Bill Oberlin for Mercedes and BMW. So typically very varied indeed in GT Daytona. I make that 5 different makes in the top 5 positions. Lexus, Aston Martin, Porsche, Mercedes and BMW, just the way we like it. We're very close, by the way, to the end of another race hour, with just 3 minutes or so to go before 3 hours will be in the book.
Wow, that's already then the length of one of our regular season quote-unquote sprint races. That's amazing how quickly that time has gone past, Johnny.
It's, I suppose, been frustrating in parts, because we had a caution of over half an hour, and we did have that almost 60-minute green flag run, which was most welcome, but there's been plenty to keep our attention, and that's probably why it doesn't feel anything like 3 hours, Jeremy.
Flown past, absolutely flown past. But we've got Chase Elliott is now driving number 31 car, the reigning NASCAR Sprint Cup champion, who before the raw test here last week had never driven a prototype car. Ergo, he had never driven a car with any significant downforce. Certainly couldn't say the Cup cars have any downforce. They have lots of grunt, but not much downforce. So that was a very steep learning curve for Chase. He hadn't been available for the test that the team did at Daytona in December, but he's got himself quickly up to speed. He's been turning some very good lap times. He's now around about 8 seconds behind Harry Ticknell, and it's been, 8 or 10 laps since we went back to green, so you're doing a really nice, respectable job. He knows what his task is, not to cause any damage to the car, bring it back in one piece. But he's very, very capable, is Chase. His father, of course, $1 Million Bill, or Awesome Bill from Dawsonville, the 1988 Sprint Cup champion in that amazing season where he won absolutely everything, and just a cool guy, Bill, from Dawsonville in Georgia, of course, and he was a heck of a road racer as well, and clearly his son has taken to it very, very quickly because of his 11 wins in the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series. 5 of them have come on road courses, and of course he went on to win a championship last season as well. So an accomplished road racer, relishing the opportunity to get behind one of these Cadillac DPI cars here, and running in that number 31 car from Michelin Engineering, currently in the 7th position.
You tune to RS2 IMSA Radio, and this is the 59th edition of the 24 Hours of Daytona. It is time for a Mazda racing update, and Tristan Vautier currently leads the motor race for Mustang, sampling the Cadillac after 89 laps, has a 2.8 second lead over Ricky Taylor's Konica Minolta Acura DPI car number 10. Third position is the 01 Kevin Magnussen driven Caddy. And then it's Olivier Pla, car 60 for Meyershank Racing in his Acura. Top 5 completed by Simon Pagenaud in the Ally Cadillac Racing DPI, that's car number 48. LMP2 is led by Paul-Louis Chatin on a bit of a tear right now. He's extended his gap to 11.5 seconds for Era Motorsport and the Orica LMP2, car 18. And he's ahead of car 52, Ben Keating, the PR1 Matheson Motorsport entry, also an Orica. Tim Bourret is third in car number 8 for Tower Motorsport. In GTLM, the next class down on the timing screen, despite the fact that LMP3s, remember, will be put back ahead of the GT cars at the restarts. But generally, all 5 of the GTLM cars still in the running are ahead of the small batch of LMP3s. And the order is 2 Corvettes, Nick Tandy in the 4, Jordan Taylor in the 3, then Jesse Krohn in the 24 BMW, 25 Philip Eng driven BMW Team RLL M8, and then James Collado in the Risi Competizione Ferrari. LMP3, easy to give you the top 3, they run 20th to 22nd. Wayne Boyd for the 33 crew, Gar Robinson in the 74 car for Riley Motorsports, and then the 54 Core Autosport Ligier is third. And in GT Daytona, Kyle Kirkwood for Vassar Sullivan, and the Lexus is leading from Darren Turner's Aston Martin for Heart of Racing Team, car 23. Trent Hidman for the 16 Wright Motorsports Porsche is third, ahead of Indy Doncher and Bill Oberlin in the 57 Mercedes and the 96 BMW respectively. That is the order after 3 hours and your latest Mazda racing update. Joe Bradley, we're a little bit puzzled as to the state of the number 8 car right now. Some people say it's retired, others don't. What do you know?
As far as I can make, Johnny, the number 8 is still running. It's I'll just check on where it is in the order, and as far as I can make out, the number 88 is still in the order. It's running in the top 10. It's currently third in LMP2. It's Bureau at the wheel of the Tower Motorsport Orica, so I'm not sure where that info came from. The number 8 still running and still in the hunt.
I even mentioned it in the Mazda Racing update, so should have spotted that. Thank you for drawing my attention to it. Yeah, so there doesn't seem to be any problem at all for the Tower Motorsport car. Actually hearing that it's the 81, not the 8 car. So car 81 is a possible retirement. The Dragon Speed car, which was being driven by Rob Hoders, had its issues at various points around the lap earlier on. To remember, that brought out, if not the first caution, then the second one. It was very early on in the race, and sadly, Dragon Speed, they're 1 car down, but they do have 2 entered into this event. All eyes therefore onto the 82 car instead. There's a pit stop under green for car 38, which presumably is Cameron Castles returning from the wrong side of the wall. The Performance Tech Motorsports car had its dramas with Ferrari 62 not too long ago.
That car back into the pit lane, but so unfortunate because it had been leading a really good first stint there for the young Swedish driver Rasmus Lind. That really is a star in the making. He's been plying his trade on the road to Indy for the last few years. He's finished second in the championship, both in USF 2000 and Indy Pro 2000 in consecutive years, both to Kyle Kirkwood, which is no mean feat, because Kyle is definitely a star in the making. And Kyle, by the way, actually coincidentally is leading GTD at the moment in number 14 Lexus. But that young Swede, Rasmus Lind, just 19 years of age, and it was a really good first stint. Cameron Castles now is driving that car, and hopefully he can get out again. The other two co-drivers, by the way, in that car, Mateo Lorena from Guatemala and Ayrton Ori from Orlando, Florida, are both 16 years of age. And Cameron can't hear me right now because he's in the car, but the combined age of the other three drivers doesn't even add up to Cameron. And Cameron's not that old. He's only just over the half-century mark.
That's Jeremy Shaw. I'm Johnny Palmer. You're tuned to RS2 IMSA Radio from the Haggerty Global Broadcast Centre. And now, much mooted, much trailed, we can catch up with our pole sitter from those many hours ago, because all the hard work was done, of course, on the Raw weekend before this one, which set the grid. Whelen Engineering Racing taking pole position, and the man that started at the front of the pack was Felipe Nasser, who joins us now. Good evening, Felipe.
Good evening, guys. How we doing?
Very well, very well. The more important thing is how are you doing, and how was the race start?
I'm doing great. I just got back to my RV here, about to get some energy, refuel again, and get hydrated. But I'm feeling good. I feel like the first part of the race went pretty well. I was happy to get up in the lead, and I was kept the 31 Whelen Engineering there for quite a while. Hitting my marks. The car has really strong pace, and it was finally. I'm pleased we're back in Daytona. I'm pleased the race went green. I've been waiting for so long for this time, preparing myself, the whole team, and it was pretty good. I feel like we have a decent balance to fight up front. Unfortunately, we had an unlucky yellow that came against us at the wrong time, and that shuffled us back to the back of the DPI field. But I'm not afraid they're gonna get it back. It's a long race. There's a lot to happen, but so far so good on the 31 Whelen Engineering.
I'm interested, Felipe, in the dynamic of this year's running of the race, because unusually you came into this weekend knowing that actually all the hard work for the grid position was done. So did that give you an element of being more relaxed than normal, or was the pressure still on during the pre-practice sessions?
You can never relax on this race. I mean, it's the dynamic of the 24 is that all drivers here, I think it's one of the best ever lineups I've seen across the field of the DPI series. It's just amazing quality of teams and drivers. And but yeah, getting on pole and getting the car up front on that qualifying race was a lot of fun, and I was very pleased to show that all the hard work we put on the off-season had paid off pretty well, and all the work the engineers did, mechanics. I think that was a nice warm-up for everybody to kind of expect what was going to happen in the race, and it's pretty. It feels nice. It's a nice award to have. It's always an honor to be starting this race up front. And I finally had the chance to be leading the race for quite a while as well. And there's a lot to go. There's a lot to experience. There's a lot to happen. But the good thing is the car is handling well. It has the speed. And I hope Chase is having fun in the car right now.
Felipe, it's Jeremy Shaw here. Thanks so much for joining us. That's really cool of you. For Chase, this is a really steep learning curve for him, isn't it? I know he's been leaning on you guys because he's never driven a downforce car before at all.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. Nice to be talking with you here. Yeah, it's a completely different environment for him, different cars, different everything. Tires, the visibility in the car, downforce. So it's quite a big transition from where he comes from. But all I've seen from Chase, it's a lot of talent. The kid has skills. He's a good listener. He picked up every session he was in the car. Always, asking us questions. He always wanted to know, where can I improve? Why should I do this? And I could just see, the right attitude from a champ. And I think he respects us a lot, all drivers, this series. And I'm pretty sure he's going to have a blast. It's an honor to have him. And he keeps saying, I just don't want to screw your guys' race. And I'm sure he won't. He's going to, everything that I saw, he's ready and he's prepared. But again, it's a big learning curve. He's going to feel a lot of it right now in this night stint. The track, the car, everything changes from hour to hour right now. So that's good. It's good for him to experience it now.
It is. I guess with COVID, probably his dad hasn't been around, has he, Bill Elliott? Have you met Bill?
I haven't seen. It will be a pleasure to see if he was around, but I haven't seen him.
Felipe, thank you so much for taking some time out to chat to us, because we realise that it's a busy time, and we're also taking downtime away from you, so much appreciated. I'm sure you know when you're going back in the car, but you're not going to tell us, are you?
Right now, I don't know. It could be. Yeah, right now I couldn't say anything, but I'll probably be back soon.
That's a nice way of putting it, and I entirely know what you mean. I knew that you would have to keep your cards close to your chest. I would have done exactly the same thing.
You, guys.
Felipe Nasser, thank you so much. Great for Jeremy to add a couple of questions in there as well, and we'll keep our eyes trained on the timing screen to see when you next get back in to car 31. But we wish you well for the rest of the race. Felipe Nasser as part of the VP Racing Fuels Pit and Paddock Report. You're tuned to IMSA Radio. This is RS2, part of the Radio Show Limited network of channels. Remember, you can get involved as well at IMSA Radio, hashtag R24 Radio. And it's Jeremy Shaw and John Farmer keeping you company for this phase of the race in the Hagerty Global Broadcast Centre. The car we were just talking about, Jeremy, is back into pit road. This is car 31 with Chase Elliott into the pit lane for the 6th time already, but that is about right. The stops, they are there or thereabouts. Car 31, 7th place as he came in, and fighting 2 other cars on pit road, the Mazda of Harry Tinkle and the Mustang Sampling Cadillac of Tristan Vautier.
Yeah, and the race leader, Tristan Vautier, was in on the previous lap. He came in out of the lead. He got about a second and a half over the number 10 car of Ricky Taylor, which I would expect to be in next time around, or possibly the one after that. This is the regular time now for pit stops. Number 5, 55 and 31 all came in on this same lap, number 95, and then we'll see more coming in very, very shortly.
Wonderful noise of the Cadillac bursting back into life. Oh, there's a car off, which is an LMP3 car, I believe. It was one of the smaller prototypes spinning from 5th position in LMP3. It's the 91 car, which is the Riley Motorsports into Ligier. So 5th place, yes it is, with Jim Cox at the wheel, and that looked to have happened in the vicinity of the bus stop on the back straight. The 01 car is also in as well on this lap from the DPI category. So Kevin Magnussen was fighting for the race lead with Ricky Taylor, but no longer. Magnussen parks it briefly and then is sent back out onto track. But what happened for Jim Cox into the bus stop? I think all on his own in the Wins-sponsored Riley Motorsports car. That's the car that Jérôme Blakemolen will be piloting a little bit later on, and also Austin McCusker and Dylan Murray part of that driving lineup. But the 3 car really wasn't very far away either. Maybe just got a bit too high into the marbles, or was he spooked perhaps by a car just up ahead? There were 2 cars going into the bus stop, but I couldn't see any contact there, Jeremy.
No, I couldn't either. Hopefully he'll have got away with that one, and he'll be able to continue without any undue drama. That was a pit stop for the number 12 Lexus, I believe. That was the car that had some problems earlier on. Robert McGuinness has been driving that car lately. They had a problem with the transponder, I think it was, early on, which they had to change. They fell, I think it was 3 laps off the pace, and they remained 3 laps behind, I think, at the moment. No, I lie. Beg your pardon. I think they were 2 laps behind, and they got at least one of those back. So that number 12 car is now, I think, just 1 lap down to the rest of the field. Here's a pit stop for the number 10 car. This is the last of leaders to make its pit stop on this sequence.
And out it goes in a tweak to the livery from previous years when that was applied to a Cadillac. Not a sponsorship, resplendent just beneath the driver's cockpit and on the rear dorsal fin as well. It's car 10 actually displaying the positional illuminated light on the side as well, which I think is red 10, but of course it reverts to different programming when that car is, or any car is in the pit lane, and then will show its positional light within class once it rejoins. There are 1 or 2 race numbers and livery numbers that are rather conflicting, notably on the Wright Motorsports Porsche, by the way, which is listed and is entered as car 16, but it has a rather large number 1 on the side as well, and I had to take several double takes at that earlier on in the week. As the sparks fly, the Liquimoly BMW works its way out of the chicane on the back straight, pursued by, I think, a GT11 BMW. No, it's a Mercedes from GT Daytona, I beg your pardon, and indicated by the fact that they leave the bus stop pretty much at the same speed, whereas GTLM cars do have the legs on the GT Daytona car. Still not quite happy with the identity of that second Daytona car as they come off the banking. That's because it's an Aston Martin, not a Mercedes. Something wasn't quite fitting there in my mind. It's the 97 Aston Martin from TF Sport. That's the reason why. And the other car that Ben Keating is entered into. So 97 is running in 6th place. Charlie Eastwood at the wheel currently. The Belfast-born, but Irish national. He runs with the Irish flag on the belt. And he's been with TF Sport for a good couple of seasons now. Won Le Mans with that team and came so close to taking victory in the World Endurance Championship last November at Bahrain. Sadly, TF Sport car, they would have to come in for a stop rather unexpectedly, and that took them out of contention. But Charlie's well established now in Tom Ferrier's outfit and is joined by new Aston Martin works driver Richard Westbrook, who raced at the 24 Hours of Le Mans last year, was also drafted into the AMR squad when Alex Lynn tested positive for coronavirus leading into that final WEC round, in fact, at Bahrain, and Westy was brought back in again. And Maxwell Root is the 4th driver in that combination. So Eastwood pursuing Bill Oberlin in the Liquimoly-sponsored Turner Motorsport BMW, number 96. And the Wright Porsche, which does have its number 16 race number illuminated. It also has the green positional light in the rear window on the side of the car. That's currently running in 4th place. And behind Darren Turner's Heart of Racing Aston Martin number 23. They are nose to tail heading into turn number 1. DT on the ragged edge there as he slowed the big Vantage. I'm well aware that he has got company there in the form of Trent Hidman in the number 16 Wright Motorsport car. They are trying to get close to Kyle Kirkwood, who has a 3-second lead in the Vassar Sullivan Lexus, and Indy Dodscher, who has steadily worked his way up the order actually in GT Daytona in the last 30 minutes. The last time I checked, he was in 4th. He's now up to 2nd, and that may well be courtesy of the last bout of pit stops. The car's now heading out of the Western Horseshoe, as we can head to Joe Bradley for this VP Racing Fuels Pit and Paddock report.
Just to confirm, Johnny, that we talked about the 29, that's the Racing Team Netherlands car, having firstly an off and then gearbox issues. The gearbox issues has transpired into that car actually being, I think, our first retirement. Yeah, I'm going to take the punt of that being our first retirement. Catastrophic failure of the gearbox on that number 29. A little bit of information regarding the 91 that's just come in the pits. It's the Rally Motorsports Leisure, currently 5th in LMP3. That car's about to be taken over by Austin McCusker, and he's the winner of the 2019 IMSA LMP3 Championship, and it's down to IMSA that allowed him to use his scholarship money to do this race instead of an entire season, and it's down to John Doonan and IMSA that Austin is getting into that car for his first stint in this race. I've been tasked, Johnny, with finding out exactly why we've had the number 81 in the pits for such a long time, and it looks also like that is a retirement also. That's the number 81 being the Dragon Speed car. Front end damage to that. I'm just trying to clarify with one of the team contacts exactly what that is, and I'm not going to speculate yet. I'll come back to you when I've got something firmed up.
Excellent, thank you, because although we do enjoy doing speculation here on RS2 IMSA Radio when it comes to the comings and goings of particular teams, and if retirement is mooted, we very much want to get that as accurate as possible. So we'll allow Joe with his VP Racing Fuels probing and asking questions in the pit and paddock reports. We'll get some concrete information and bring that to you. We've just passed the top of another racing hour, or sorry, another clock hour I should say. Racing hours falling on the 40 minutes past the hour, but 1 minute past 7 on the east coast of Florida. And you're tuned to RS2 IMSA Radio with the 59th edition of the 24 Hours of Daytona, the Rolex 24, with chronographs galore up for grabs at the end of this one. 40 minutes or so to go before we reach the 4-hour mark, and Tristan Vautier leads after 101 laps. 10.6 seconds is his advantage over Ricky Taylor. The strained flat 6 in the background is Trent Hinman, now going down the gears. He's no really much any closer to Darren Turner's Aston Martin. This is very much deja vu for Hinman, but he won't get mesmerised too much by that. He'll be assessing exactly where his Porsche has the advantage over the Aston, but then also where the V8 Mercedes design, of course, in that Aston Martin is slightly better than his. Just not really the opportunity to get by right now. Full width of the car for the rear light bar that illuminates on DT's car as he slows it into the Western Horseshoe. And again, hustling that Aston through turn 6, Darren Turner. Now the Aston, for me, has slightly more legs coming out of that slow speed left-hander and up onto the banking. As the Porsche pulls through the gears, does it have slightly more top end? This is fascinating to me to find out where the balance of performance is benefiting and detracting from the Porsche performance versus the Aston Martin. Kyle Kirkwood with a 2.8 second lead now in GT Daytona. Down the gears and into the bus-stop chicane goes the number 10 car, by the way. That will now slot past Porsche on the high side into Speedway turn 3. There's an LMP2 to overtake as well, which is done very safely indeed. So Ricky Taylor now, for a short period of time at least, has clear road in front of him. Carl Tilley leads the LMP2 division, as there was a change of position there. Was that Ricky Taylor then losing a spot to Kevin Magnussen, or was he getting ahead of the 0-1 car? Maybe something switched around. Taylor overtaking Simon Pagenaud, actually, and into third place. That would tally, but Magnussen and Taylor are very close to one another as well. Just half a second separating them. So LMP2 led by Kyle Tilley from Tristan Nunez in the Win Autosport Oreca. Timothy Bouret, after probably frightening an awful lot of people to do with the number 8 Tower Motorsport Oreca, saying that they were out of the race. Apologies for that. Some confusion between the 8 and the 81, but it is the Dragon Speed car that, by the sounds of things, will take no further part. 8 cars still very much present and running in third place in class. 52 is fourth, which is the Scott Huffaker-driven PR1 Mathiasen Motorsport car. That car has been as high as certainly second. It may even have led the class in the early stages. Now Simon Huffaker has taken over from Ben Keating with Nick Tandy, now the lone Corvette out front in GTLM. So splitting the two C8Rs is Jesse Krohn, 24 BMW. So Corvette, BMW, Corvette, BMW, and then the Risi Competizione Ferrari fifth for James Collado. He is 43 odd seconds down from Philip Eng. So I think now, unfortunately for the Risi guys, those two moments where James tripped over a couple of cars, one was assessed as his fault because he got a drive-through penalty because of it. Then there was another moment as he rejoined from the drive-through when there were two cars into one and not really working into the Western Horseshoe, and James again ended up on the grass. So he's now having to play catch-up from that fifth place in 62 Ferrari. Carl Kirkwood leading the GT Daytona division with Indy Launcher in second place. Wayne Taylor all set for a long night. Wayne, Jeremy Shaw surely always stays up, does he, for the duration as the team boss?
I think so, yeah. I don't think you could drag him off there. He's certainly kicking and screaming if you try to get him away from there, that's for sure. I mean, yeah, he gets right into the strategies, obviously, and might not be calling the shots necessarily, but he oversees absolutely everything. And of course, particularly with his son with the car, he's just seen Ricky, as you were describing there, get past Kevin Magnussen, move up to second place in that number 10 Acura. And it's a good three-car battle there for second right now. Ricky Taylor, Kevin K-Mag and Simon Pagenaud. With Tristan Vautier, he's stretching out now. He's got about 12 seconds over the rest of the field, which I think is probably the biggest lead anybody has ever had in this race so far. Yes, it is, by quite some margin, actually. So that's kind of interesting. Here, just had a chat with Bo Barfield, our race director. I'd sent him a note a while ago asking about that early caution we had, the extended one, you might remember. And I was asking kind of what happened there. And he was, got credit where credit's due, super kind of him to fill me in. It was easier to talk about it than send me a text, because it's a bit of a long story. But basically what happened is they've analysed the situation in race control, and it appears the safety car probably wasn't going quite quick enough during that caution period, because there's a whole bunch of cars lined up at the exit of the pits having made their stops, but the track wasn't yet clear because they put the red light on at the end of pit lane until after the last car on track has gone past, so that the cars coming out of the pits can take up position at the back of the pack. And it got, there was a big long train of cars, and basically a whole bunch of them were in the kind of the wrong order for various reasons. So they wanted to sort that out all out, number one. Number two, they wanted to find out why the problem was, and then in order to make sure it doesn't happen again. And for the subsequent caution periods, they've upped the pace of the safety car, so it's now doing about 3-minute laps rather than 3.5 minutes, or that was the numbers he told me. But you know, again, race control really on the ball there, trying to figure out why there was that hiccup at the pit exit that caused the cars to be shuffled in the wrong order. and then fixing it, and hopefully that problem will not reoccur again during this race.
Was that Mo that instigated the call to you? That wasn't you ringing him?
No, I'd sent him a text a while ago. He said, "Can I call you?" Which I missed for a while, but I just saw it. I said, "Yeah, sure." So yeah, I mean, massively impressed. I mean, you know, they really do everything they can to try and make our job, well, keep us in the loop. Let's put it that way. Much appreciated.
There's a very small handful of championships that will provide that level of service. Let me tell you, mentioning no other names, but we are indebted to those in race control who realise that it's all one big show. We're trying to put on a great event here, and we're also trying to keep you guys informed, listeners to RS2 IMSA Radio. So thank you to Bo Barfield for that information, and I'm sure if anything else needs to be updated, it'll be straight on the blower again to be sure. Brilliant stuff. So another half an hour gone. I make it 7:10 in the evening, but we've been in full darkness for quite some time already. The fantastic illuminated signs, Sunoco signs here, there and everywhere around the track that are instantly recognisable. The left-hander at the Speedway turn 4, and then down onto the infield goes the number 10 car of Ricky Taylor, behind Kevin Magnussen again. So he got ahead, slipped back behind again. This is a really intense fight between Magnussen and Taylor. Simon Pagenaud would love to be involved as well, and he's not that far away from doing so. 0.6 of a second adrift, so we may well have just over a 14-second advantage for the race lead. And Tristan Vautier, and then second, third, and fourth are completely together. Olivier Pla, 6.5 seconds adrift in his Meyer Shank Racing with Curb Agajanian Acura. That car is the 60 machine. And it's Harry Tignall, which at times the Mazda's been further up, third and fourth places, now finds itself back down to 6th, but the lead lap is the most important place to be.
Well, that's exactly right, Johnny Palmer, and we saw that car had a drive-through penalty much earlier in the race, and that's what cost it quite a bit of track position. And I was sort of surprised that it wasn't sort of making up some of that track position, but the team said, look, hey, there's no need to make up track position at this stage in the race. There's so long to go. There are going to be people to make up the time then. We're not going to overextend the car in the early stages of this race. And the drivers there, it's Ollie, it's driving that car. It's Harry Tignall at the moment. He's taken over from Oliver Jarvis, and he's actually closed in now on his former teammate Olivier Pla, who's driving the Meyer Shank Racing Acura car number 60, and he's now, those two actually in nose to tail position for 5th and 6th. It's been a very measured run for Mazda shown so far. No question in my mind, they have not yet shown what pace they really have out there.
And that's all very deliberate. I think the minimal running in the practice sessions sort of gave us the indication that they would be keeping their powder dry in the early stages, giving very little away. Why would you, frankly? It's all about staying in the mix in the opening, 20 hours or so, and then it's down to the final four.
Yeah,
made that point. Yeah, go on.
No, a pit stop here for the I'm not sure who was running first or second, actually. I think it was running in the lead. It was number 3 Corvette. Then leading off this next round of pit stops in GTLM. Just looking, Ollie Pla had a very slow lap. It was 140.3 last time around. He's generally turning 36 and 7s and 8s. You don't see many 1 minute 40s amongst the prototypes. This is not a track on which, like some of the other tracks on which we race, where you can easily lose a lot of time in traffic. Here, you're going to lose the odd second here and there for sure, but not like we have it, let's say something like VIR, where you can easily lose 5 or 6 seconds in traffic, and several other tracks as well. So that was a slow lap there for Ollie Pla. Not quite sure why. I don't know whether he had some traffic, some undue traffic, or something worse than that, I don't know, but hopefully he seems to be up to speed again. Now his last lap was right on schedule, 136.6, but what he has now, as I alluded to a moment or two ago, he now has Harry Ticknell in the 55 Mazda right on his tail.
Yeah, this is now a 12-lap stint for Olivier Pla in the 60 Acura for Meyershank Racing. Best lap in the stint at 136.1, but an average of a 137.6. That really does put into context the 1 minute 40, which, as you say, very unusual. And I mean, that's not a long enough time to indicate an off-track moment, I would suggest, or an incident of any kind. But maybe you're right that he just hit a wall of GT traffic, perhaps, and had to get out of the throttle, maybe on the infield. But no indication that that problem's going to persist. 136.6, very respectable to pick the stint back up again, as into pit lane comes, well, a whole clutch of GT Daytona cars, including the BMW from Turner Motorsport. But also in, so that's Bill Oberlin's BMW, by the way. Carl Kirkwood is in on this lap as well. And just before those two stopped, we had pit visits for Indy Dontje and the Mercedes from Winward Racing, Darren Turner's Aston Martin, Charlie Eastwood's Vantage as well. Nicholas Nielsen came in the AF Corsa run Ferrari, Stein Schotthorst for GRT Grasser Racing, together with the Allegra Motorsport Mercedes number 28 and the Wright Motorsport car of Trent Hinman. And Trent, well, only a few moments ago was fourth. He's now all the way down in ninth place according to the order that they came into pit road. But again, that is down to the quirk of where the timing loop is on pit road, and we'll get a more accurate order as soon as they head back into the race. 96 Turner Motorsport BMW needing to be careful as it inches its way back to the fast lane, because there was an LMP3 car that needed to be avoided, and that's now that was right at pit exit, and his said car is now rejoining. Could well have been the 54 possibly. No, it's not the 54, because George Kurtz is still in pit lane. 74 rejoining though, with Spencer Piggott at the wheel. That's the Riley Motorsports car that was the one that wasn't spinning. Remember, 2 Riley Motorsports entered LMP3s in this race. The spinning car was Jim Cox at the bus stop, and the 74, the blue and orange car, is the other one now rejoining second place behind the class leader, which is the 33. And driving that is Lance Wilsey. Now, there was a big problem for the 96 Turner Motorsport BMW. Hadn't spotted that first time around, but the car was released, Jeremy, with the hose, the fueling hose still attached, and therefore the fueling mechanic almost taken completely away with the car there.
That's a very unusual mistake for that Turner Motorsport team. They're certainly, generally speaking, they're absolutely perfect in the pit stop, so that'll be galling for them. This is this team, of course, won the Michelin Pilot Challenge race yesterday. There's a replay of it there, and that was really weird. He was gone way too soon there. I think it's Aidan Reed who's taken that car out now, so not quite sure what happened there for the young Australian, because that car was right up, it has been right up there in contention. But that's going to cost him back, because that is going to be a penalty for sure for the number 96 car.
It's also split at least one of the pipes that leads to the car, because there was quite a spout of fuel that appeared from that pipe. But it took the mechanic with the hose in the car, because the hose on that particular setup sits on the right-hand side of the mechanic whose duty it is to fuel the car, and there was no escape, because you've got the hose that plugs into the side of the car right on your shoulder, and as soon as the car decides to leave, you are going with it, whether you like it or not. And the Liquid Moly BMW is back in pit road straight away. This has to be the penalty, Jeremy.
Yes, indeed, I'm sure it is. It's exit pits, penalty, exit pits with hose or tool attached, propelling parts. That's also a penalty for the number 111 GRT Grasser Racing Lamborghini a couple of moments ago as well. Also a penalty for wheel rotation on the jack stand. You're not allowed when the car's up on the stands, you have to keep the brakes on. No real rotation is allowed at all. Obviously for safety reasons for the guys if they're changing wheels on the car. So penalty also then for the 111 car, which had been that car at the moment, and that was well up in the order as well. So 2 dramas there. We talked about the number 55 and 60 back at the sharp end of the field exchanging positions. Indeed they did. Harry Tittle did get past Olivier Pla, so the Mazda now up into 5th position as Chase Elliott brings number 31 with the pits for the drivers.
Hopefully via Turner Motorsport social media feeds we'll get some news on the mechanic involved there. Was able to think back to the Pratt perch, although relatively gingerly, but I wouldn't be surprised if some bruising going on there at the very least. But if we can get an update from Turner as to how she is doing, that would be great. But penalty served by the driver in question, and it was the 96 BMW, so you're right with your identification that it was Ed Reed, Australia driver, joining Colton Herter, Robbie Foley and Bill Oberlin in the 96 for this weekend. I suppose at the end of the day it's down to when you get the signal from your team as well. The 31 car, I think, Jeremy, is an early start for the Whelen Engineering car.
It certainly is. Chase Elliott, he'd done only 16 laps on this stint. Only 28 minutes, so in probably been about 10 minutes earlier than which normally. He wasn't in any danger of going a lap down. He was about 30 seconds odd behind, maybe a bit more than that behind the race leader, but he was doing just fine. Curious why they should bring him in. We'll try and find that out. He's going to be a good 10 minutes. I don't expect to see the leaders in for another 7 or 8 minutes yet.
And a moment or two ago, that was the 31 car heading into pit road. I was wondering there was another car affected as well, but as you make the point, off-piste to some extent, the 31 car. Heard from Felipe Nazo, one of its drivers, a little earlier on. He took the start of the race from pole position. You're tuned to RS2 IMSA Radio, live from the Haggerty Global Broadcast Centre. Jeremy Shaw and Johnny Palmer, and bringing us the VP Racing Fuels pit and paddock reports is Joe Bradley.
I think I've had just by a few seconds, a few minutes, our first official retirement. We knew that the car had gone off. It had resulted in some suspension damage. The lads at Dragon Speed had fixed that quite readily, and Ben Handley then took the car out, but the car had a misfire, and also the engine was getting very hot, so he brought the car back in. The Gibson engine guys fitted some new parts, but they just haven't been able to cure the misfire, so it's an engine issue. And once again, we're going to talk about this wherever we're racing, wherever in the world we're racing, but when a car hits something, that energy from that impact does generate all through the car, and you don't know where it's going to transpire and manifest in causing you issues somewhere in the chassis that you would think can be completely unconnected. But that's the official retirement. They've got an uncurable misfire on the 81.
Thank you for clearing that up, Joe. Our VP Racing Fuels pit and paddock reporter for this segment of the race. Another chance to describe to you the Turner Motorsport pickup in the pit lane. And the sign from the mechanic who was dictating the pit stop effectively and offering Aidan Reed the signal as to when to stop and when to go, the message stayed the same as far as I read that. It was a hand in front of the windshield saying stay where you are, fuel's still going in, and the car just lurched forward. So a peculiar moment, but as far as the pit crew were concerned, they did all that they needed to do to the letter of the law. So conversations will be had, I'm sure, down in the RVs at Turner Motorsport, but it would appear that Aidan Reed either out of his control, maybe, I don't know, maybe he was concentrated on something else, and all of a sudden the car moved. They'll get to the bottom of it. The penalty has been served, and they can now put that into the background. They will need to repair that rig though, because it's torn up at least one of those hoses pretty badly. Jeremy, sorry, you've had the opportunity to look at the incident again. Would you agree with that? It looked like the sign was "Stay where you are."
Completely, yeah. I mean, you know, the pit leader there for the team was, and he wasn't right in front of the windscreen, but he was sort of maybe 6 feet in front of the car on the left-hand side of it, you know, next to the pit wall, with his left hand clearly outstretched while the fueling was still being completed. And you're right, all of a sudden the car took off. That was an odd one, but Aidan Reed will learn from that. He will be chased by it, I'm sure. I think the penalty was just a drive, so he should be able to complete that and remain on the lead lap. But it will certainly cost him a fair bit of time. And that number 96 car now down in the 14th position in class. That's Aidan Reed in number 96. The class is still being led by Carl Kirkwood in Lexus car number 14. Got a couple of seconds or so over Indy Doncha, the Winward Racing Mercedes car number 57. Trent Hidman just a little bit further back in car number 16, and of course Trent Hidman was a very late addition to this team. Ryan Hardwick is going to be the full-season driver, of course, in number 16 car, along with Patrick Long. And Ryan qualified the car on pole position for the Motul Pole Award 100, a qualifying race that took place last weekend. Unfortunately, that was on Saturday afternoon. On Saturday evening, in the nighttime practice session at the Raw Test, he had a big crash coming into the pits. Some car was left on him, and it veered right across the road and onto the right, across over to the outside retaining wall. A lot of damage to that car. The car had to be replaced. That wasn't the incident, however, that's kept Ryan Hardwick out of this race. He was still on track to be driving. Unfortunately, this would have been Thursday, I guess, in a practice session for the Michelin Pilot Challenge Race Series, which is also planning on doing this season in a Porsche Cayman GT4 car. He had another big wreck. I think this time it was at the bus stop, and this time he sustained a concussion and was actually in the hospital with a couple of nights ago. So wish Ryan the very, very best, and hope to see him back here soon. But as a result of that concussion, not able to drive in the race. So Trent Hidman, who is a former series champion, of course, in the GTD class, albeit for Acura, has got the nod. He's been invited to drive that Porsche. First time driving a Porsche for Trent Hidman, but he's a very, very talented young man, and he's running in third position at the moment in car number 16. That's Trent Hidman from Wayside, New Jersey.
I like it. Running, yes, regularly in the top three. He dropped down a number of places as the pit stops cycled around last time, but Wright Motorsports doing something right this early in the race. Good speed from the teal liveried number 1 or number 16 car. Entered as 16, but it has a very large number 1, as I explained earlier on the doors, which has foxed me on a couple of occasions. The 5 car heads out of pit road, brought in by Tristan Vautier. Just caught the end of that pit stop, so I'm not sure if they did a driver change. They certainly did in the 31, Mike Conway taking over. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a change of pilot for car number 5, about to trigger the pit lane exit loop to confirm or deny that fact. K-Mag, Kevin Magnussen leading the way on lap 118. And Vautier staying in the 5 car as he works his way right and left, and careful not to cross the blend line on the exit. Now up to the international horseshoe again. With Ricky Taylor still there in third. The gaps at the moment will be fairly temperamental whilst those cars rejoin. We'll get more of an idea of the margins between the two. There we go, 7.2 seconds is now the new lead for Kevin Magnussen versus Ricky Taylor. So Cadillac and Acura much closer this time. We had a lead earlier on of nearly 14 seconds, but with that latest pit stop, nice and tight once again.